Hey there, Smite fans, and welcome in to the SCC Wildcards. Aggro and Mifflin going to kick you off for what's sure to be a great four-day event where these SCC and SOC teams are trying to find their way to the Smite World Championship. We greatly appreciate you leaving Night City in order to join us here for our Thursday beginning, which is going to be Europe Round 1 and quarterfinals. Now, this is a double elimination bracket. We stay in our own region, so EU will only be playing against EU teams. Same can be said for North America. And these teams are going to be competing in best of threes all the way up until the finals, which is a best of 5 with a one-game advantage for the winner side. And only one team, Mifflin here, is going to be able to move on and try and punch their ticket to the World Championship.
Yeah, I'm thinking it's probably going to be Belt Slap, right? These guys have been undefeated throughout the entirety of this last phase, maybe dropping a map here and there up against these guys in EU. But otherwise, I mean, they have been looking dominant for the entirety of this year. I think they're the fan favorites and my favorites as well.
I don't think anyone would disagree with you there. That Belt Slap team absolutely stacked, but you're going to have to wait until match 3 if you want to check them out. Instead, we're going to be starting with this Smileyface roster, the 4th seed in the SEC here in phase number 2, a team that was really competitive with a lot of this SEC. Now, the European SEC in general was quite contested below Belt Slap and below the Snake Pit. Those two teams seem to be a cut above the rest, but the SOC and SEC, I think, as we take a look at the bracket, is going to be pretty competitive before we get to the Belt Slap and Snake Pit games.
Yeah, I'm excited for this. Smileyface up against Cold Alpacas should be a pretty indicative match on how hot Smileyface is coming in. In the recent past, Smileyface has had some of the best matchups up against Belt Slap, so I think they're a definite contender within this week for sure. And Cold Alpacas, certainly no slouch. They've got huge names on their teams, like Preds, who competed in the Xbox scene way back when, Pretty Prime, Vaporish Coast, the literal Penta kid. He did that to me, by the way. There's a ton of talent throughout this entirety of the first set.
Don't worry, I remember that quite well. Maybe not as well as you remember it, though, as, again, you were on the receiving end of a Porish Coast's Penta on land. Yeah. Let's not let everybody forget that. Let's start, though, with this Smileyface team, as they are the SCC team. This squad has a lot of talent on it, as we mentioned, and has been quite competitive. Remember, the Poppies did not make this LAN, and that was the team that actually ended up defeating Belt Slap a couple playoffs ago, so we know that this team must be doing something right.
Yeah, I think it's a lot to do with their ability to wait out for the mid-game, but that could be said for the majority of EU teams. But there are some strong win conditions that Smileyface are bringing. Gunter, in particular, has been a standout player with a very unorthodox god pool, and it seems like junglers are having a hard time locking him down. They're having a very hard time diving him as well. So I think he should be the player that most people are keeping their eyes on.
And then on the other side, Cold Alpacas, as you mentioned, an interesting mix of players. Pretty Prime, of course, of SPL fame, one of the best mid laners to ever touch the game in the SPL. Now teaming up with some old Xbox names that you mentioned, Coast, Preds. I mean, this is going to be an interesting team to watch as two different styles of Smite historically are kind of coming together.
So distinctive styles as well. When you think of the SCL days, it's run it down aggression. I mean, we had Warriors mid, Triple Guardians up until the very bitter end. And then you compare it to Pretty Prime, who's kind of leading the charge of this orthodox European Smite style from way back in the day. Wait it out, 50 minutes. Let's get these late game hyper carries. Let's roll out. Just make sure that I'm alive in the team fight and I'll win the game for you. I'll be interested to see how they parse that out, how it really lands, and how it plays on the field.
Well, let's get into those picks and bans and see what we're gonna see in our opening set here of the SCC Wildcards. This is gonna be a lot of fun to see what these teams prioritize, because remember that we haven't seen some competitive Smite in a while now. I mean, the end of the SPL playoffs happened quite a bit ago. These teams have been scrimming, preparing. There have been patches since then. What are teams going to be prioritizing? And it seems like the healers are going to be near the top of that Raw, the very first ban, and I expect to see a lot of Raw prioritization here this week, Miff.
Yeah, I think we're seeing almost a mirror of what's happening in ranked right now. Raw bans, set bans. I wouldn't be surprised if we see an Aphrodite fall through here as well. I like it a lot in order to make sure that you're not letting too much do for the enemy team. Raw is incredibly hard to lock down. It's one of the best late game healers out of combat as well. So I think Smileyface is doing a good job addressing that. And already, it seems like both teams are bringing an identity to their bans. We don't want any divers coming out of the blue team here. We don't want anyone surviving these team fights in the late game for Smileyface. It's very interesting, and I think it's indicative of how both of these teams are going to be looking to play this match.
There's the Persephone ban as well, obviously giving a lot of respect over towards Pretty Prime in that mid lane. 2 out of the 3 bans by Smileyface in the first phase directed at him. Is Guan Yu and Set taken off the board by Cold Alpacas. Umoja's obviously the god that I'm thinking of, and there she goes. Yep. She does end up getting banned. And in situations like this, in playoffs, Mifflin, a lot of times that we would see Hunters prioritize. I mean, we've got Cupid and Rom both open, but Heimdall has really risen up and considered one of those top-tier Hunters now, I think. You've got a lot of options, but Smileyface going to stick to the tried and true. They first picked the Rom.
And this leaves Cold Alpacas in a spot where they can just forego picking their Hunter. Cupid likely not going to get picked up in that second slot for Smileyface, so Cold Alpacas have run of the field. They can go for the Hercules if they want an aggressive support. They can prioritize a jungler here as well, and can pretty reliably get that Cupid on that next phase of picks, insofar as Smileyface doesn't decide to go for a double Hunter draft.
Little surprised that Hercules gets prioritized as heavily. As you mentioned, these bans fairly similar to what you're seeing in high-level ranked these days, and at least in North America, Hercules has really fallen off the bandwagon a little bit. That nerf to his passive a while ago ended up being a pretty big deal. Now, a lot of SPL teams were still willing to run the Hercules, but it was typically for the Herc specialists, you know, the Aurora, the Mike, the Rongyus of the league. I don't know. I think that this is a little bit of a question mark to me to see the Hercules picked up this early. How do you feel about it?
I think it's a question mark, but it comes down to how well he's able to play it. If you are a Herc specialist, I think you can get away with it absolutely. You're still going to be able to find that pressure in lane. I mean, sure, the nerf to his passive has made it a little bit harder for him to trade out with Hunters in lane 1v1, but he still has that potential. And I think that Hercules brings this kind of wild card to the wild cards, in that you can force the enemy team to prioritize something like a Sunder to deal with you in the backline, or even an Ankh. With the Ankh changes, now you do less healing, and you're taking more damage once you're afflicted by it as well. So I think that this Herc pick is good, but you need to match it up with pressure on the map, which they've done already. This Surcat matched up with Hercules in the 3v3 in mid, it's going to be very hard to survive those.
Surcat's starting to rise all of a sudden, man. She was getting a little bit more play at SPL playoffs. I don't really see it. I don't know if she's really a top-tier assassin, but she is the first assassin off the board, assuming she is going into the jungle. Though with Cthulhu and Hercules locked in, I'm pretty sure that she has pretty much nowhere else to go, as it looks like Smileyface is going to start taking away Hunters. Cupid, the obvious one. I think Heimdall is the next obvious selection if you're looking at the Hunter tier list. I just don't think anyone really competes with those top 3.
Yeah, interesting that we see them just elect not to pick up a Hunter there, but instead it's going to be the On Her ban coming through from Smileyface. I like it. I think On Her is a slept-on pick right now. He's got a ton of aggression. The recent change to his jump, Disperse, now has a lot less pre-fire frames, meaning that it's a lot easier to escape out of these sticky situations. You can jump out of King Arthur's Tier 1 ultimate just to stun on reaction, or even Merlin's arcane stance as well. So I think it's a smart ban, but you're still leaving what is objectively the higher tier, right? Heimdall makes his way through, and it's going to get picked up instantly.
Yeah, I think Coast's probably pretty happy about how that shook down right there, as it looks like Prime is going to get the final selection. He gets to see the whole draft before he locks in his god, as Achilles comes in, likely for jungle, but if we're expecting some more aggressive picks here this weekend, we've seen Achilles support in the past. It's something that we could see Smileyface go to here, depending on their final selection, as they're going to go into the bank time with the Sobek lock-in that Achilles is slotted for the jungle. Sobek in support. Plenty of CC here on Smileyface's roster. I like the draft they have here, Miff. It seems pretty well balanced and strong through all phases of the game.
That is a classic Smite draft right there. You want the strong front line with back lines able to peel out for each other. Achilles should be setting up a tent inside of that solo lane, one of the age-old counters to Cthulhu. Descent into Madness gives you damage mitigation. We don't care about that. We've got an execute. I really like what Smileyface has drafted here. Not only is it strong in its own right, but it's got a ton of counter matchups into the enemy draft.
Man, this Vulcan pick, if it were any other human on the whole planet, I'd be like, what are they thinking, man? Vulcan is not exactly in the strongest place he's ever been. But Prime, arguably, and for my money, is the best Vulcan player we've ever seen in Smite. That was in his prime. Is he still able to execute on that level? For me, Miff, I think he's kind of got to carry if he's going to pick something like this.
He has to, but he's got bad matchups. I had the opportunity to speak with Paul, and he's one of the Vulcan specialists that we have in the SPL, and he said that Vulcan sucks into any cripple, and we've got multiple cripples on the side of Smileyface. Rom makes contact with a rollout arrow. All of a sudden, Vulcan's dead in 2 auto attacks. If King Arthur ever makes it into range of this Vulcan, he's going to have a very hard time surviving that situation as well. Pretty Prime might have dug himself into a hole here.
Let's see if he can dig himself out then. Cold Alpacas versus Smileyface. Kicking off the Smite World Championship wildcards here with game number 1.
Well, competitive Smite is officially back, and what a way to start it off. 2 teams fighting for a date with Belt Slap in the next round. Up here it is Dolson and Gormizer, and of course Doug, to bring you the action to kick off this 4-day event in which one team here from EU will be able to make it through into the Smite World Championships. And Gormizer, the Cold Alpacas, with that much on the line, they're going to go with a Vulcan to start off their weekend.
And you know what? I'm excited to see it. Very similar to what Aggro said. Because it's Prime playing it, I'm going to give it a little bit of the benefit of the doubt. But my eyes immediately go to Bevy Monster. And there's a whole lane phase for him to get through. But late game, if this King Arthur is not just sitting on Vulcan and making his life miserable,
right.
then Bevy Monster is kind of failing his team. And that's actually something like recently I got to sit down. I talked to Fino K, Nika, Yarkor about King Arthur specifically. And like the one thing he does best in those late game fights is ignore literally everyone else and just beeline for the backline. Vulcan doesn't have a lot to displace himself, and not a whole lot to control King Arthur either. So I think that's going to be the matchup that at least late game can determine where Pretty Prime's damage goes.
Oh, and so much of the conversation as well, not only about whether Vulcan's going to work here in this matchup, but they brought it up on the desk. It's been a little while since we've seen competitive Smite at this level, so we don't really know where maybe some of these players feel like the meta is moving. But Gore, I think all things considered, outside of maybe the Vulcan, we're looking at some standard picks. Maybe the standout on the other side is this Achilles out of the jungle. I guess we see that every once in a while, but definitely a little curious.
Yeah, he doesn't come through a lot, but it is exactly, I think Mifflin had highlighted it wonderfully on the desk as well, where it's just to deal with Kana. That execute's going to come in handy pretty heavily.
Oh, there's a pluck over onto Astia, and he's going to keep himself alive for the time being. Plenty of kill pressure in this lane, really on either side. This is going to be a fun one to follow along with, Gore. I think throughout the first couple levels, whether it's the push-pull from the Hercules or the pluck on in from the Sobek, both of these hunters, they've got to be wary of a lot of the early pressure that the countering support on the other side is going to be putting out.
And that's the thing, I think this is a matchup that is going to determine. When I look at Cold Alpaca's lineup, look, there's a lot of huge names on that team, and so you almost arguably want to go for them.
The push-pull into one another, and it's Agent right now that's taking a little bit more damage, but Vaporous Coast eats a lot of it on the backside. He'll have to back himself away, so are some fireworks here, but no kills just yet.
And this is something that the kill potential, at least for Heimdall, doesn't scream to be as high as the ROM. I think the pressure that's going to come out from the Sobek ROM, even though Hercules is there, is just going to be a little bit harder for Smileyface. And so they're going to be able to find themselves maybe in a more favorable position, at least for the early game. But as long as Astia keeps this pressure up, this Hercules is at least making things awkward for Agent, which is going to then make things more difficult for Echrome. Kind of just a weird shifty ladder as it goes down. Echrome is the one that ends up eating all of the damage anyway, or at least losing maybe some of that pressure because his support isn't able to be as front and foremost when he's taking all this poke.
And Gora, looking over in at the solo lane here, I mean, one of the things we talked about with the King Arthur was his late game ability to get involved in this fight. Astia's going to have to dash away there. Took about half of his HP and damage. It's about surviving the early game now. I mean, it's hard, I think, for Cthulhu, as in and out of the meta as we've sort of seen him over the last few months, to really have massive kill pressure without a gank early on, but definitely can whittle down that health bar. So it's kind of a game of balance where I'm sure Bevy wants to get very aggressive as a King Arthur, but you're eating a good bit of damage going up against Cthulhu in that lane. So there's definitely some balance at play there on how you want to play that.
It's an interesting dynamic because both of those solo laners, in my mind, can get a lot of pressure on their own. I mean, just a second ago, we saw Bevy Monster pushed under his Tier 1 tower, and now, well, Kana's backing, but right prior to that, the wave was right at his Tier 1 tower, right? I think it's going to go back and forth between these two, just so much like that. And like you said, there's not necessarily a lot of kill potential for either. Like, unless Preds or Ferrari come over, I don't think we're going to be seeing a lot of kills over there that come through. But it's that interesting dynamic that translates into the late game. The Guardian nature, I think that Cthulhu has is going to keep him a little safer unless this Achilles is able to come over with ult, and there's already a lot of damage. And in that case, I think you also need the Merlin on top of that, just to make sure the burn is there. Otherwise, King Arthur, I mean, he can hit you a whole ton, but again, you're a Guardian, you're Cthulhu. You're just going to kind of shrug it off and keep farming the wave as you need to.
Gord, is interesting. I'm glad you kind of bring up Merlin there as well, because as interesting and obviously more unique of a pick as this Vulcan is, Merlin has been, at least at the SPL level, kind of exclusive to Sanguine, it seems like sometimes. Return to that in just a moment as Agent has been locked in here. Back into the back line he goes, but he'll stay alive. Now it's Ferrari putting out most of the damage. Preds ends up getting first blood here in this game. It's Agent who does end up falling down. It looks like the DOT on the end got it. But Action Gore and Cold Alpacas are on the board.
And what I love out of all of that, as much as there's presence and awareness from Cold Alpacas, it has to be that ult from Prime, mainly because so many Vulcans, and I'm a culprit of this as well, you want to go for the max range. You want the max damage, and he just fires a quick short-range shot to get the damage.
Oh, there's more fighting going on here. Bevy getting melted away. Preds dashes through. That's another kill on the board for this Circuit, and it could get worse. Ferrari turns around, actually looking to maybe go back in here. Agent is close by. Would be a 3 versus 2 if Cold Alpacas want to keep going, but they do not, and when the dust settles, Gore, it's the second kill on the board for the Cold Alpacas jungler.
Honestly, I think Cold Alpacas, it might have been a little risky, but probably could have continued that pressure. I think it's just lack of wards. They didn't know exactly where Merlin was, and if he makes that rotation over as well,
yes, for sure,
then things get really dicey. From our vision, though, yeah, go steal that blue buff. That could have been yours, and probably a kill on top of it to Ferrari, shutting down that jungler, who right now is actually still a little bit ahead of Preds, even though he's down 2 kills. He has that experience on his side, and that is something I think that would be very crucial here. Slow down the King Arthur, helps take away, or not the King Arthur, the Achilles here, King Arthur as well, and just make it a little easier for Kana, and specifically Preds, to start getting more hands-on with the way this comp is. Already that ult was solid, it's back up now. You can get into this once again, and either Agent, or if it happens to be Merlin, you have good enough lockdown and chase down to make sure that they're uncomfortable on the side of Smileyface.
There's a moment where maybe Gunter's able to make that rotation over, but then you cut over to him, and the jungler completing off the red buff there didn't have enough mana, I don't think, to make the rotation over to the right-hand side. But of course, we've got the God View, we know what's going on, and Cold Alpacas don't have all of that same information. Supports have officially started to leave the long lane over there, so we'll see if a Porsche Coast and E-Chrome start to duel it out with one another without any jungle pressure or anything like that here over the next few minutes. But Agent early on here, Gore, talking about the support starting to roam out. This Sobek has been in the fray consistently, hasn't worked out for him just yet. Obviously fell now for first blood, but that's not going to slow him down at all. Astia gets plucked back in. Gunter is able to chunk down just a bit of damage, but never any real danger for this Hercules.
I mean, Smileyface are putting in as much pressure as they can over here, and it's not dangerous for them to do so. I think there's a good 5v5, like, group up fight from Cold Alpacas, but being able to control Astia and specifically get his cooldowns going, make sure his knockup's around, is definitely going to make things harder for him.
Agent has to burn his ultimate here, and I think Cold Alpacas happy to just take that, and he'll walk himself away. So, probably a bit frustrating, I think, or through the first 7.5 minutes of this game for Agent, where it feels like he's maybe seen some of these small openings, but a lot of the engagement has been turned around onto this Sobek. I was wondering just for a moment if Cold Alpacas want to go in, but instead just a small invade and then right back to some of those mid camps and away. But you look at Agent and the way he started to play this early game, there's probably a little frustration brewing that a lot of it hasn't turned around into many kills for the rest of his team yet. Now it's Bevy Monster getting taunted back in, stunned down, ulted back even by Fred. Oh, and of course, when Astia is this close by, that's why you want to engage. Excavate won't be enough to get the kill, but as Preds now baited his teammate into a kill, Ferrari is going to get in on the chase here. Rotation over from Gunter from the mid lane, but that'll be where this one settles out. No kills on the board.
Preds showcases exactly what I wanted to highlight. You were talking about Agent and his aggression, and I think Preds is the reason, like, if Agent goes in and misses, that ult, that displacement that Circuit's going to have there that kept that King Arthur in combat for so long is what's going to just make things so difficult for the Sobek. But it also showcased a perfect example of how Preds can't do it on his own. Like, this team needs Prime and Coast late game, or else they have no damage. I mean, you're already going into Sledge. You don't really have that much power yet if you're Preds. Cthulhu is a lot of damage and known for being top of the damage charts throughout a lot of games, but admittedly not the guy you expect and not the god that you're thinking of when you're expecting someone to come in and just sweep away somebody's health bar entirely, unless he's willing to commit his ult.
Oh my, Agent made the mistake of standing anywhere in the mid lane. Pretty Prime has to use his beads here. He'll stay alive. Agent actually nearly was able to turn that around, but you see the immense amount of pressure that's been put on the Sobek throughout the first couple minutes of this game. Gore, the pacing has really slowed down into, I think, what we expect to see a lot of here this weekend over in EU. Very methodical. A couple kills on the board, 9.5, 10 minutes in. I'd say is about standard for the way this region likes to play.
Yeah, I mean, this is, like you said, standard for the way they have been going. It's usually a farm fest and trying to get things going. In fact, the fact that Preds has 2 kills at this point is pretty impressive just for him. But the biggest thing is that it didn't lead to a huge advantage overall for Cold Alpacas. They haven't done anything.
Poor Agent gets taunted in again. Will return with the block. Astia won't get it done, but Preds will. Killing spree now for the Serket, but will E-Chrome shut him down? The sidestep's enough for the time being, but E-Chrome will ring true on his final shot. Big shutdown gold there. Over to Smileyface. Astia, low health, no mana. Stun is in. Ferrari, execute. Yes, sir. Smileyface, 2 kills on the board.
Not exactly where I think we anticipated seeing that execute go a lot through the early game, but I'm still happy to see that it's coming through either way. Make sure you get the shutdown and 2 swing kills. I mean, just as we were talking about how it was par for the course, they triple almost the amount of kills that were on the board. And again, Smileyface come out on top of it, even though they're down by 1 kill. That's a 2-for-1 trade, but they're also about 300 gold ahead. Not a huge lead, but it's more than Cold Alpacas can say, right? I mean, they haven't been able to do anything, even though they have a Serket that's 3-1. You know, this Achilles has been keeping pace with their Preds, I think has been very focused on the fight portion, and maybe they're splitting the experience pretty well, but I see a support that's down 2 levels, a solo that's down 1 level. Cold Alpacas need to figure out what they're doing here in order to get back on course, because otherwise, Smileyface are going to take a small lead, cultivate it into something glorious.
That feels wild to me. After the early game Agent has had here, he's only died twice, but 2 out of 3 deaths, but he's been engaged on a whole lot. I think you could make the argument that it'd be okay if he was the one that was a couple of levels down, but that small fight there in the jungle, I guess, enough to give Agent a small boost, just a 1-level lead there for himself now, and then there's a 1-level lead over in solo lane for Bevy. So I think the ebb and flow of these European games now dictates maybe there's a bit of a slowdown before the next big fit of action happens. I was wondering if Astia maybe goes for behind the back gank there, but he'll drop a ward, back himself away, and Gore, there is a Gold Fury to fight over, so that's probably where these teams start to pivot.
I mean, there's a lot of pressure that comes through, but I'm always worried. Like, Smileyface, I think, have better control around the Gold Fury pit, but that Vulcan scares me.
The Agent has to use his ult to avoid being pushed right back into the rest of Cold Alpacas. So, admittedly, decent ultimate now down for the next little bit of time. Cold Alpacas don't look like they're going to try to force that issue just yet. Oracle go over to the Cold Alpacas. Agent has to use his ultimate. But right back to farming we go. Nothing really to force the issue anymore for Cold Alpacas.
I am just stressed. I think like it's constant anxiety, and I feel like Smileyface are getting it as well, because Pretty Prime at any point, if he hits that ult, is going to be incredibly dangerous. That's the big game changer in the middle of a fight. Nice giant AoE circle, good at securing objectives. Sometimes not even necessary to do so, but they're going to use it here. It's just that concept of knowing that at any given time your health bar could just be halved from what it is, and all of a sudden you're in fear. But luckily this is Cold Alpacas riding the ship, right? Taking things that have been going kind of astray. Again, the level disparity is really starting to get to me here for Cold Alpacas, and I think the experience, they're starting to feel it. But getting some control on the gold, getting their hand on the steering wheel, at least for a little bit, is going to open this door for them.
Kana's the only one close by to this Pyromancer, but it'll get burned away, and Smileyface will answer in kind. So, small silver lining there. That's going to pull that gold lead right back to even. We've now seen a couple of objectives where the Cold Alpacas, I think, read Smileyface well, understand that the opening to go over to that Gold Fury is going to be there, and they'll take that away. But then Smileyface, kind of in a similar read, just on the opposite side of the map, realized that the Pyromancer then is a simple objective for them to look towards. And now, Gore, if we've talked about how this game probably will have the tendency to slow down, no Pyro, no Fury, you're not going for a 13-minute Fire Giant. It's got to be on Preds or Ferrari, I suppose, to make some action happen.
Yeah, we got like 5 minutes before anybody even looks at a Fire Giant. That's usually SBL level, like, 18-minute mark was that Fire Giant that we're constantly hitting. When it comes down here, especially in Europe, I wouldn't be surprised if it takes a little bit longer for these teams to start looking over there, although I think with Pretty Prime, again, whenever his ult is available, and the way Cold Alpacas took that Gold Fury, they are definitely the ones that can control the objective fights a lot better compared to what Smileyface have. And a lot of it does come down to that secure. I mean, you're going to have Gunter way better at burning the objectives because he's Merlin, but his secure just doesn't exist the same way that a giant AoE literally covers the size of the Gold Fury or Fire Giant pit all from a Vulcan will. So it's always that fear I think Smileyface are going to have. And for a Gold Fury, we've been seeing this trade with Pyromancer happen more and more often where it's not the end of the world for you. Yes, now technically you're no longer in the lead in gold, but the 100 gold difference right now is not going to make Smileyface sweat. What will, though, is the Oni Fury in 3 minutes, or a Fire Giant, in 5, 10, however many minutes it takes to get there. Once you start getting those objectives, if you're Cold Alpacas, Smileyface, it doesn't matter if you stay even in gold, the pressure starts to mount up.
Yeah, absolutely. That's going to be actually a lot of fun to watch, I think. Some of these mid to late game objectives start to get started up is the burn versus the secure between the mid laner specifically. Definitely steal potential for Cold Alpacas if they're not the ones who are able to start up the objective. For the time being, Gore, here at the 15-minute mark, there is a decent-sized advantage in that Agent has been able to lock in his second active here, has Sunder and the Shell. Astia still just the blink on his side. Watch out, E-Chrome, taunted in beats, well-timed there, but the up-down, there's way too much damage here. Up to the Skygo, the snipes, the Aegis is there to save E-Chrome's life as well. Well played on the Smileyface Hunter, but look at this rotation in double stun from Ferrari. The big chunk damage from Pretty Prime just won't be there. Execute, body blocked out. Crystal back away, that saves the life of a push this time. Astia, he's got to be the sacrificial lamb here. He'll go down. Everyone else from Cold Alpacas stay alive. What a rotation from both teams.
I mean, just big, and again, that showcases the strengths and weaknesses of Vulcan all in one. In fact, we might even get to see more here because Pretty Prime's getting chased, but, I mean, look at the damage output Vulcan can have, and that's phenomenal. What Pretty Prime just did to scare off Ferrari was great, but you also see the downside, which is you have this giant ult, and we mentioned the burst damage, how much it can do, but unless they're standing still, you have so much time to run out of there. I mean, you could stop, sit down, take a drink, eat a meal, get up, then walk out of there and still dodge it. If it hits you, it will kill you. But that if is so heavy, it's so wild to try and connect it, that I think Pretty Prime is going to maybe need a little more setup. Ideally, if Preds can toss someone back into the ultimate, that's where you're going to be able to find your 1-2 punch.
And this is what we've seen. If you look at Pretty Prime's build, obviously a lot of mid laners have really loved this Doom Orb on almost anyone. I mean, we've seen Doom Orb slotted into almost every mage at one time or another. I think Vulcan specifically, though, Gore, if you talk about the ability to dive on him and make him uncomfortable, that extra move speed, maybe it's not just nice, like maybe it's almost necessary for this Vulcan to move a little quicker, get away from some of that dive that Smileyface are absolutely going to be bringing towards him.
Yeah, and you saw, I mean, like the damage spike that comes along with it as well. Along with the turret damage that's going to be coming through, Vulcan's self-peel is in the meatball. If you can find the knock-up, that's always going to be solid. But otherwise, you backfire, toss a turret down, and just hope it kills them. And you're going to be able to get a lot of damage. Backfire is not an ability to scoff at. And so his self-peel, like you said, there's part of it that is this movement speed for Pretty Prime that just helps him run away. And then there's part of it that is, I can outrun you now, and I'll kill you if you stay with me. Like, my cooldowns will come up a little bit faster than you, I will do more damage off these abilities. Like, you do have to fear me just enough that you can't chase me under tower the way that you would have a couple of years ago.
Well, it's a horrific scenario for the carries on Smileyface. 3 sets of thorns for the Cold Alpacas. Astia, Kana, Preds all have Blink and Thorns on their side, so I can hear the eye rolls of Hunter mains everywhere. Looking at the relic choice here for the Cold Alpacas, might get to see some use here. Agent stunned down on the back as the Oni Fury reaches half HP. Here come the rockets from the back line. Pretty Prime's got one. Big fight now for the Cold Alpacas. E-Chrome though, killing spree of his own. Off and away, one caught into the ultimate deep in the back line. That'll end up being a kill. Another for Pretty Prime here in this fight. Cold Alpacas, they've got 3. They've only lost 1. It looks like there's an Oni Fury on the menu as well.
E-Chrome I don't like this at all. If he had his ult, then yes, get aggressive, but no one's low enough. You are a lone hunter. There's no Merlin to save you. Yeah, you're plucked. His beads are gone. Like, ultimately, you get a little bit of poke, and you confirm that the thing you knew they were doing. They're taking the Oni Fury right in front of you, and you can't pressure out that much. I think I would have preferred trying to find that time, at least farming a little bit. I admire the tenacity from eChrome, though, to be able to face down 4 people and not run away is impressive. And realistically, it's still only 700 gold between these two teams, Dave. It's not a massive lead for Cold Alpacas, but those Oni minions are going to make a pretty big difference. There's no tower that has fallen just yet. Hopefully those waves, at least for Alpacas, should change that.
And I think that's really the first big swing in this game where we've seen Pretty Prime be very, very effective, right? I mean, he's got 2 kills and an assist there, affecting every single kill that the Cold Alpacas just got. And again, you know, it's not the ult that caught every single member of Smileyface or anything like that, but the damage was flowing from this Vulcan. So for those of us that are maybe scratching our heads a little bit at the pick, we're now starting to see some of that potential that it brings to the table. We'll get to see a little bit more of that damage around this Pyromancer here. It is now at half HP. Smileyface a little bit more cautious than we've seen them in the past. eChrome not here for this fight while all 5 members of the Cold Alpacas are grouped up. 1-man advantage will give over a free Pyro.
And you know, it's actually interesting that the Vulcan's working so well here, and even enough to get them confident enough for a Fire Giant. They're going to start up a fight here.
Whoa. Watch out, in the backline is Ferrari. Pretty Prime has to use the Aegis. He'll stay alive for the time being. Backfire keeps him in it, but the snipes from eChrome nearly gets him. Pretty Prime stays alive with a sliver of HP. But look at what's happening here on the front line. Kana has separated out this fight. No execute this time from Pretty Prime. Bevy Monster somehow stays alive. There's still a chase on from eChrome up around the side here. Flush pulls Astia right into the backline, but eChrome doesn't have enough damage for the time being to finish off the kill. Bubble comes up, but you can't bubble out the damage. eChrome pulls one back here in this fight. There's maybe enough damage though as Red leaps back in, but he leaps back into 3. Smileyface, big time fight. They get 3.
It just showcases that good CC. Aggro had mentioned it on the desk. There you get to see it in action. You jump in against 3, it's not going to work out well. Everyone's low, though. Pretty Prime's back. No ult available. Coast is in the neighborhood. This is still steal territory, or at least cleanup territory.
Well, Heavy might go down here, but instead it's a clean call, and the FG agent goes in. Bit of a head scratcher there. Vaporish Coast gets that kill, so 1 less FG buff. Pretty Prime in on the chase, halfway to his ultimate. That's a gutsy call. I mean, you think back to the original Fire Giant call. Cold Alpacas start that one up. I think immediately regret it after the way things turned out. Yeah. But Smileyface, I mean, that's a lot of aggro juggling and really calculating how much damage you have and can take to go back in on that FG.
They just ended up so separated on Cold Alpacas. It was very difficult. With the CC from Smileyface, if you end up as one person against 2 or 3, the lockdown's just going to be too insane to deal with here. And, you know, you're going to have to burn all of your relics. Both beads down for the carries, but you had highlighted earlier, I see 3 pairs of Blinks and Thorns. There's not a lot of wiggle room for Kana, for Preds, for Astia. So whenever this Cthulhu goes down, and that's the first, I think, big sign that things are going wrong for Alpacas, there's no one else that can really get out of there. If Preds goes in, he's locked down until they can get something like a Magi's Cloak, if they even opt into it. As of now, nobody has picked it up outside of Astia. And so this Hercules might be able to stay alive, but at that rate, it's at what cost, right? I mean, you're 0-3 and 6. Sure. Maybe you're getting the setup. Maybe you will feed the kills to Prime or Coast. But until that starts happening regularly, this is such a massive swing for Smileyface. And even though you scratch your head a little bit at Agent dying there, ultimately, hey, at least it's only the support that dies, right? You still have eChrome having that so he can take down these towers.
This is where Smileyface can really, I mean, the kills-wise, gold-wise, this game is on a knife edge, but this is where this game will start to break open. A lot of towers still on the map. Both towers down in the mid lane, but still Tier 1 and Tier 2 on the left and right-hand side of the map. This is where Smileyface can really start to pull ahead that lead. I suppose, you know, you're still comfortable to some extent in defending maybe Tier 2 or your Phoenix line if you're the Cold Alpacas. I mean, all of the kills and gold is really funneled into the same spot on both teams. Yeah. eChrome has just been able to stay a little bit safer by nature of that ROM kit. And it looks like maybe Cold Alpacas are confident in defending this Tier 2.
It literally just follows one line of logic. Does Cthulhu have ult? If yes, then fight, right? You're going to be able to do at least enough, even against a team with Fire Giant, that I think you can pressure them out. You have a lot of burst damage from the Vulcan, a lot of good damage from Coast, and as long as Kana is available with ult, you can put some pressure out. Do you put that pressure onto something like a Primal Fury? Probably not. I honestly think you just let this one go to the wayside. You prepare yourself for either the Pyro, next Fire Giant, but you try to stall Smileyface. You don't let him get a massive advantage with a second Tier 2 tower, because that gold, it's only 2,000 as of right now. That's manageable. 3,000, it's still a little manageable. It's difficult to manage, but it's manageable at least. It just depends on how these late game fights go, and if you can stall out another minute, which it doesn't look like they're going to have much issues doing, then you're going to be able to wait until this Fire Giant buff has fallen off, and then refocus up for the next fight. Figure out where things went wrong, which ideally is just that Agent got a really good Sunder onto Kana and Kana died, so try to make sure your frontline stays a little bit more available, and that'll shake up the way the fight goes for Alpacas.
Gore, what do we think about this Achilles here out of the jungle for Ferrari? I mean, he is pulled 2 levels ahead, was 3 levels ahead of Preds just a moment ago, but obviously can't go over 20. The pressure that Ferrari put out on that FG fight, I mean, he just sat on Pretty Prime, and Pretty Prime couldn't participate. And then you look at the build that he's got, sort of attack speed centric maybe on this Achilles, and maybe that's helped him kind of sit on this back line and melt down some of that damage.
Yeah, between King Arthur, Achilles, honestly, even to a little bit the Sobek, they have a lot of backline disruption potential. If Agent can find a great pluck, he's going to be able to pull someone. But, you know, going back to just King Arthur and Achilles, these two warriors, very easily, not only just walking back there, using their movement to get back there, but so adept at locking down someone like Prime or Coast. I mean, again, back to the beginning of that fight, Kana dies, Prime gets a sick ult off in the process, but Prime's at 1 HP. Like, he's one hit from dead in the backline already because they have so much disruption. That was the issue I had kind of highlighted, at least for King Arthur early on, was that he should be able to just get back there and beat up the carries for Cold Alpacas. You add in a second warrior, granted maybe not as tanky, but a little bit more damage on him, that's going to be able to get back there more consistently as well. It's just upsetting, I think, if you're Cold Alpacas, because we had already highlighted how difficult it is for this Vulcan to get away from people.
And now Ferrari's going to be building into a little lifesteal on top of the baked-in lifesteal to his kit as well. It's going to be a very, very difficult Achilles to kill off, I think, for the Cold Alpacas. Fire Giant just about 10 seconds away here. So you look at how the map state changed over the course of that first Fire Giant push. Tier 1, Tier 2 tower down in mid lane. Tier 1 in both left and right lane taken down by Smileyface as well. Also Primal Fury and a Pyromancer, so that's the big gold spike now. It's about 2,000 when that FG first started, up to about 5,000 now. So definitely pushing their advantage as far as they can. This big fight likely decides the game here one way or another, depending on how convincing it is for either of these two teams. Cold Alpacas not dissuaded though, Goremizer. They're going to step up here and try to defend this Fire Giant.
And they have that ult from Pretty Prime. That's the greatest security. You know that Fire Giant's not moving anywhere. You can't miss that kind of target unless you just miss-aim it entirely. And I don't think Prime's going to be doing that. Watch now that I jinx it and it goes way wide.
Somewhere else, right?
Either way, it is something that you can bet on if they start this up on Smileyface, kind of the same way Alpacas did earlier, then you know you can come in and sweep up the fight afterward. It's just wondering whether or not they have enough of advantage now, or if you can bait someone into a bad position like Agent with a missed plug to burn them down and force a 4v5.
I'm just keeping my eyes on where Ferrari is going to rotate to here. Last time that fight was so successful for Smileyface because Ferrari could flank around and got free reign on the backline of the Cold Alpacas, but plenty of ward coverage now for the Cold Alpacas that's going to prevent this Achilles from getting into that backline for free. Admire some of the aggression I see from the carries here from Smileyface. Ekrom and Gunter on a couple separate occasions have walked up here with the rest of their front line just to try to chunk down some damage. Excavate gets used there from Astia. Maybe a bit of slow down usage there to try to get Smileyface to back away, and they will. Over to the FG, half HP now on the big one. Bevy Monster locked into the right-hand side of the rest of his team. Plucked back in, that's caught onto Astia. Will get out alive this time. Pretty Prime lets the rockets fly, eats about half of Ferrari's health bar, and look at Kana running down the back. Ekrom still alive though, there's not enough time to go back in on him. He's swinging away onto Astia and he'll stay alive yet again. The kiting, just way too much, but the Cold Alpacas elsewhere in the fight that are starting to run things. It's a 2-for-1 as we stand. Bevy Monster is going to try to finish off this kill. Kana stays alive despite the snipes. It's a double kill from Preds. Flourish Ghost now is going to tank up a little bit too much damage. Health bars on a knife edge, but Cold Alpacas want some more.
I mean, the damage they can output here is going to be immense, but I don't know if they can dive this tier 2. It seems too risky.
Oh man, and now they're maybe too low to even go back for that Fire Giant. Pretty Prime again survives with a sliver of health. Gore, this one, definitely a fight that the Cold Alpacas will feel like they had won. Kills 3 for 1, despite the damage being in the favor of Smileyface. The big thing is that gold. I mean, 1,500 gold starts to filter back into the Cold Alpacas, and the Fire Giant will have to wait.
And it looks like, yeah, they're going to take just a smidge too long. I was wondering, I mean, if you back, heal up, and then beeline for the Fire Giant, there's a world where you're able to get it. Probably right now, as everyone's respawning, you take it down. But then Bevy Monster comes into the equation, Echrome comes into it. I feel like they've actually just given a better window for Smileyface to respond to this because now the respawns have come through.
How fast can we do the FG? That's what Cold Alpacas are asking now. Ferrari still working his way in from the back. Snipes down from Echrome. Oh! Will be enough! Are you kidding me? Smileyface stealing away. Gunther gets the kill as well. Is this backbreaking for the Cold Alpacas? Well, the fight will determine it for sure. Astia quite low here, and Ferrari will pick up the kill. Cold Alpacas, you sought this out. You started off this fight, and Smileyface are thanking you for it.
It just took them too long, Dave. I mean, they waited. They stopped. They got a speed buff. They got some experience on the way. They were patient about getting back to an important Fire Giant fight. And Echrome, I mean, look, 5-0-2, I'm already going to give him a lot of credit for these late-game fights. But with the snipes coming up, like, almost exactly when they come up there, able to get in there. And now, this Phoenix is exposed. If they win one more fight, they can win.
Well, not having Agent is certainly big, but it's Astia and Vaporish Coast that are down for the Cold Alpacas. This is a team that knows what they've got in the ability to end the game, and they don't feel like right now is the best time to push things in. Still, as mentioned before, a couple Tier 2 towers left standing. Primal Fury is still available as well. And you got Fire Giant for another 3 minutes or so. This is a great situation for Smileyface. We're going to get another look here as Echrome just bides his time. Easy as you like, down he goes. Kana's not there to say anything about it upon re-entry, and he can resume the fight afterwards. Well played by Echrome.
And good patience as well. I think I've seen so many ROM players, and it's easy to do. You get in that position, you go up in the sky, and you fire all 3 shots as fast as you can. You're trying to get the burst damage. You want to kill it. And then you end up missing it. You're a hair too early, and the Fire Giant, that last sliver of damage goes to an auto on somebody on the other side. That patience to just wait for the second shot, you're going to have the damage there, you have your third shot just in case, and even though that timer's ticking down in the ROM ult, just patience that comes through. And like you said, not much you can do about it afterward. Kana has to run away from Echrome. And now they're playing it, again, maybe a little too slow. There's an issue. 2 minutes have passed on this Fire Giant, 2 minutes left. They got a Phoenix. They're going to be able to get another Tier 2 tower. It's just how much of a fight Cold Alpacas can put up, especially since they're not grouped up yet on the side of Smileyface. Tier 2 shouldn't have any issues, but getting another Phoenix, that might present themselves a problem.
Agent dashes in there in hopes of popping the bubble that Astia is carrying with him, unable to do so. So a little extra safety now for this Hercules. He'll make his way back beneath this left side Phoenix. Ferrari picked up the Bloodforged. I mentioned that there was a little lifesteal being built into that build. You find a volley of kills, and suddenly the Achilles, it's already difficult to kill off with some extra shielding, increases that twofold. Now, minions, fire minions, moving down into the middle lane. You're going to get a collapse here from Ferrari around the backside if he finds that opening for himself. Instead, it's a blink hit from Astia, misses effectively everything there, except Echrome does end up getting pulled back in. Echrome uses the Aegis. He'll stay alive here. Fred's into the backline as well. Look at the Smileyface. Elfbar's absolutely melting here. Fred's ends up snagging one, but Echrome will trade it back for another. Bevy Monster, rent-free in the backline. He is melting down the Cold Alpacas, but Vaporish Coast can do it as well. Ferrari, with a little extra shielding, keeps himself in it. Look at this fight. 3. It's only Kana, it's only Astia left alive to try to defend here. Kana will blink his way back on into safety, and Smileyface are gonna pour into the Titan room.
I mean, just being able to find a clean fight like that, now with all the pressure around them, they lose 2 of their biggest damage dealers, but with just Echrome, you think this is enough.
Titan, half HP, Echrome stays alive. Titan's health bar melting down. Was the steal, but finally did it? It sure was. Smileyface, take game 1.
I think when you look at it, that team, they just came in and they knew what they were doing. That Fire Giant steal solidifies things at the end of the day, but realistically, I think going forward, Echrome are in a much stronger position, or Echrome himself was in a much better position as a hunter. 6-0-2 really did help find a lot of the damage. And even though you lose your mid laner, I think Cold Alpacas just didn't have anything to deal with the CC, the blink, the thorns. It just wasn't enough to help alleviate the stress onto their frontliners.
And Gore, we have this wild fight happening where Kana is running down the back line of Smileyface, and then you just kind of forget that Bevy Monster and Ferrari on the King Arthur and the Achilles are just sitting in the back line the entire time. It's a well-fought game here from Smileyface. Maybe a little skill, a little luck, whatever you want to call it on that FG seal, but that one ties things up nicely with a bow. Game 1, over to Smileyface. We'll take a break and be right back into Game 2.
That's how we do it, yeah.
So far, so good for Smileyface. They go up 1-0 in this set up against Cold Alpacas, but it was not easy. Mifflin, it looked to me like Cold Alpacas were about to run away with this game, and then a little bit of a botch secure. Echrome continued his unbelievable game. I mean, it felt at times like Echrome was single-handedly holding the rest of Smileyface into this one, and then he yanks them up off the ledge by stealing away the Fire Giant.
Man, you don't have to qualify it with the almost aggro. That was the Echrome carry project through and through throughout that match. But I think it's partially due to the draft as well. Cold Alpacas come away with a very strong early game draft, and I think the most they were able to separate themselves by was maybe around 2,000 gold. And then it's this fight exactly 20 minutes in. Cold Alpacas are up, what, 600 at this point, and they initiate the Fire Giant, and Smileyface absolutely decimate the fight. And from there, Smileyface is in control for the rest of the match.
Really good CC chain there by Bevy Monster in order to disrupt Preds, who had a fantastic early game for himself. That Tankster Ket build was certainly working on everybody except this dude. Echrome popped off in this one. Highest player damage in the whole game, 31,000 plus. And this, his biggest play, sealing away the Fire Giant right as that focus secure comes in. Look, that's a shot that you got to give credit to Echrome on good timing, but it ultimately lands on the feet of Pretty Prime, and it's, you know, in the window between your 800 damage ultimate and your 1,000 damage combo of your meatball and backfire. It just feels a little bad for Cold Alpacas. I'm sure it felt like they let one slip through their fingers.
That's a 1 in 100 chance, right? It's so hard. And it looked like watching Pretty Prime there, he did do the combo correctly. The meatball was landing, but maybe that arrow just came in a frame too early. Ikram a little bit too heads up with his play, not only winning them the team fight, but also stealing away the objective. Fantastic play. I think now Cold Alpacas know what they need to do to address Smileyface. It's limit Ikram. Don't give him one of the best hunters in the game, or at least get him even matchup. Don't let the Cupid through. Maybe pick up the on her if that's what you're comfortable with, but they need to limit him for sure.
I mean, it's not like Coast was a non-factor in this game. He did a lot of player damage, was using that high mult successfully on frontliners, was doing a good job. I think he was the second highest player damage in the game. It's just that Ikram was head and shoulders above in damage and in overall impact because of that Fire Giant steal. Set of picks and bans here shortly in order to determine what we will see adjustments from here on Cold Alpacas. Well, number one, they're going to start in the first pick position, and I think it is a little bit easier to do something like make sure that the enemy hunter doesn't get ROM from first pick in comparison to second pick.
I wonder if Cold Alpacas are going to prioritize their hunter, though. I mean, when you have a player like Pretty Prime on your team, you almost always want him as comfortable as possible. Sure, he struggled a little bit around that Fire Giant confirm, but inside the team fights early game, Pretty Prime was one of the huge differentiating factors for that team. I wouldn't be surprised if we see him get a comfort pick first off.
Yeah, but they waited for him the whole last draft, remember. He got his pick 10th overall in order to see the entire draft. Maybe that's the type of style Cold Alpacas is going to want to play. Let Prime get a comfort pick, but one that is making sure that he's not going to get any counter matchups on the other side. As Yamoja is going to be the first ban here by Cold Alpacas, Smileyface takes away that Persephone once again. Remember that Smileyface took away Persephone and the Ra from Prime last time around.
Interesting pivot in that first phase of bans here. Cold Alpacas are going to take away the Guan Yu. Almost what we've been seeing in the SPL, if we can remember all the way back to when we were casting that, when you're up against players like Variety, you want to target out that Guan because of what it brings to your team. It's also a fantastic flex pick, can go into the solo or support. So it's interesting that they're going to go ahead and take that away, especially considering that in game one, he was left by the wayside.
Interesting here that it's a Hercules ban by the team that just played the Hercules. They take it away themselves, and now Kepri is the god that was banned last game that is now open, I believe, with that switch up. But if I'm Cold Alpacas, I'm awfully tempted to just slam a ROM first pick, just as Smileyface did game one.
Yeah, I think ROM's definitely the pick here, and they absolutely agree with us. Now, we're in the exact same situation in reverse. Smileyface can likely allow the Cupid, the Heimdall, whatever they want to drop down to that third pick and prioritize potentially a jungler or even a soul laner up in this top two. If they want to, they can go ahead and take the Cthulhu for themselves. The Kepri you brought up has already been selected, so it's going to be much harder for this ROM to find long-range kills off that snipe as long as Scarab's Blessing is available. I like this for Smileyface. It seems like Cold Alpacas may have dropped a ball a little bit on these bans.
A little bit of a switch-up maybe costs them with that Kepri pickup, and remember they banned the Osiris in the second phase last game, now top 2'd on the other side by Smileyface. We saw Achilles be prioritizing the jungle for Smileyface in game one. Wouldn't look too bad here for Cold Alpacas in order to get an execute to go through that Scarab's Blessing. And by the way, before we move past it, that Achilles jungle build that we saw, the attack speed based one, in a good way or a bad way, Mifflin, you're a fan of the attack speed Achilles?
Wow, all right. I didn't think I'd have to dig my heels in here, Aggro. Look, I think that it was an interesting build for the counter matchup. That Achilles was almost 100% selected to deal with the Cthulhu. So that's why we see this auto-attack centric build. It's something that Mask has done in the past, where you want to be able to shred through the Cthulhu once he goes into Descent into Madness, and then use your own ultimate to execute. But I would argue, and I know you would argue the same, that the standard Mace Tree with a Heartseeker or even a Crusher, if you do want a little bit of attack speed, would have been enough to find Cthulhu in the execute threshold, and with a more standard build, he would have been much more successful against the rest of the draft. So, you know what, it was nuts. I like seeing it. I wouldn't want to see my teammates building it.
No, me neither. Jingwei is the pickup here for Smileyface as I move on before I get myself in a little bit of trouble. Some safety there in that Hunter role. And look, when Ikram just absolutely carried you in game number one, you may as well get him a pick that he can carry you with again. And Jingwei, even though obviously thought of as more defensive, can be that style of carry god. Jingwei pushes leads better than most Hunters in the game.
And she has a fantastic CC chain with the Khepri. The abduct into the updraft is just so much. It's so hard to deal with. Even in the early game around level 2, Jingwei has deceptive kill potential. I think Cold Alpacas are going to be worried about that as they select their support. A lot of the facilitator supports have been taken off the table here. Smileyface eliminates the Kabrakan and the Kuzenbo. So the fight potential for Cold Alpacas might be foregone until around level 6 in the duo lane.
Both mid laners are holding on their picks, and as I say that, we see one locked in here for Smileyface. Gunter is going to end up taking this Merlin pickup. And again, it's what we saw from him last game. Merlin is one of those gods right now, Mifflin, where I feel like he's good enough to see some fringe play, but not necessarily one of those top-tier mid laners.
Yeah, I agree. Recent nerfs to him have made him a little bit weaker. The consistent damage output isn't quite there. And it seems like right now, mid's moving to a phase where you really want them to have consistent poke damage to set up for ganks or for your frontline dive. And I'm not sure that Merlin really has the exact same potential like a Yanis would if you're Hurrywind and no one else, or a Thoth or an Agni that's been having a lot more popularity recently. It's interesting, and I think he is that fringe pick that you highlight.
Well, Giannis is even more fringe than that, and I agree with what you just said. If you're Hurrywind and nobody else, pick the Giannis. Prime once upon a time had a very, very strong Giannis, but Giannis is not as strong as he was then. I don't think itemization is as good for him as it was then. And Prime is clearly not playing at that same level as he was then. So I think that you're looking at a pretty difficult Giannis pickup here. The CC chain to set him up might be good enough. I mean, do you think that Cold Alpacas is going to be able to take this one?
I think they've got the potential for it. They have a very strong early game again around this Surcat. This Cthulhu should be this late game absolute powerhouse, and Yanis is going to be very hard to lock down for gods like Osiris or Achilles. They don't have any way to chase him down easily. I think a lot of this for Cold Alpacas is going to ride at the feet of Pretty Prime, and it's something that he should be absolutely used to by this point. But if I had to favor one, I love this Smileyface draft.
I think Smileyface got a lot of things they wanted once again, and Echrome, when he plays as well as he did in Game 1, I think it's going to be all eyes on this Jingwei here in Game number 2. Maybe on Ferrari to see if he's going to go with that attack speed build again in order to cut through this Cthulhu. Game number 2 between these two squads about to get underway. Let's throw it down to the casters to see if Smileyface can find the 2-0 victory.
Happy to take it from you there, Aggro. Still Dolson and Gore on the call. Still Doug on the camera as we move into game number 2. Gore Miser and Smileyface, they've kept the core of that not so much the composition, but the kind of feeling, I think. You know, you stick with the Merlin, you still got the Achilles, a warrior for Bevy Monster that loves to dive into the back line. So it might just be more of the same for Smileyface, and you'll get yourself a 2-0 and move on.
I will say the downside is, at least in the Osiris matchup, I'm not sure how well he's going to handle a Cthulhu over there, especially if Preds is putting a little bit more pressure on the solo lane this time around. Late game, though, you know, if you want to, Lord of the Afterlife in or Blink in, depending on where he goes, already starting with a Beads. I think that's the biggest change I'm seeing on Smileyface that maybe is worth noting, right? Last time, everybody, at least on Cold Alpacas, is getting CC'd left and right. It feels like they are constantly getting locked down. Now, seeing the team on the right have all of those beads available, if Bevy Monster is going to the backline, even though he's maybe not as adept as someone like a King Arthur last game, you still are going to be able to get back there and get out safe without getting too CC'd. And even if you are, that beads is going to help save you.
Oh, some early damage in this game here. Is Agent going to fall down for first blood? A shell will delay it. One last auto, and they Porsche coasted. Got it. Astia, they Porsche coast hit level 2 just a bit early there, Gore, and Smileyface weren't ready for it.
I mean, that's just good pressure that comes out in the Ganesh. I mean, me and you are both big fans of Ganesh and what he can apply. I'll be honest, though, levels 1 through 5, that's not where you expect him to be aggressive. That's not where you expect success to come out of this. I think a lot of that is the pressure that a Rom can bring into the duo lane, but knowing that those abilities, even just a little bit of setup is available for that, Ganesh opens it up. And again, this is something I think I roll it back to one of the last Grandmaster classes I did where I was talking about Ganesh to the Pro League, and even Raffer was like, I love Ganesh. He's one of the best Ganeshes and mainly only Ganeshes we have in the Pro League that plays it regularly. and yet at the same time, he does not like the first 5 levels, first 5 minutes or so of the game because he just doesn't have the same pressure. But obviously, if you can make it work with a ROM and get that first blood, I think this lane is set up to snowball pretty well.
Oh, I definitely love Ganesh. You could say it's literally the only thing I'm allowed to play in our internal play test, if you want to look at it that way. Yeah, small glimpse behind the curtain. It is literally the only thing I'm allowed to play in our internal play test. The only way I can keep up with the devs and all the other guys on the team. But Gore, maybe the levels 1 through 5 matchup here for Astia and Vaporish Coast feels a little bit better when you're going up against a Khepri, you know? I mean, not that Khepri lacks at all, but you're not necessarily going into a Sobek, a Hercules, somebody who's going to absolutely crush you in that same way early on.
And yeah, getting abducted even by a Khepri early on isn't going to be the end of the world. And he didn't have abduct. He wasn't level 2 yet. And so he wasn't able to quite turn that burn around. But I mean, now, especially with things going the way they are, should have abduct available for you. And Khepri's peel, once he hits 3, is realistically where it's strongest because you also have your root available to you. You can't pressure them up next to the tower wave anymore. He will pull you into the tower and they will get that kill back. So you have to be very careful with your aggression if you're Cold Alpacas.
There is ward coverage here for the Cold Alpacas, but Ferrari doesn't care. There's the stun. Oh, way too much burst damage, and Smileyface pulls one back. Gore, it's always so interesting. I mean, this is really like a meta in the way to play the game conversation, I suppose. I mean, the right move is that you got to lead. Let's shove in as far as we can to try to deny them farm and pressure on that side of the map. And you have ward coverage, I suppose, if you're the Cold Alpacas, but it's still bait. You got to be able to ride that line.
Yeah, it's so amazing how fast you can change the pace of it. You know, you get first blood. You are in control of everything over here. And it's just that one gank. I think that's the thing that we were kind of missing from Preds, I want to say all last game. This Circuit had some very interesting moments, was able to find a lot of kills early on in the game as well. For a while, was the only one with kills. I mean, what, 10, 13 minutes into the game for Cold Alpacas? But they were always, you know, onto the support. I mean, they were grabbing Agent 9 times out of 10, and yeah, cool, you're killing Agent. He suffered. He was down 2-3 levels at one point. But at the end of the day, your support is going to be able to hit a certain point where they're still going to be prominent. Their level 20 isn't as crucial as like your mage's level 20 or your hunter's level 20 because they're going to have that tankiness built up. I still want those levels as a support player, but it's not as crucial to get me to 20 as fast as it is here, you know, for Echrome or for Coast. And so I want to see Preds maybe put some pressure over there because Coast, even though he gets that first blood, should be ahead right now because of that, is falling behind just a smidge, and I think that pressure would be greatly appreciated over there and would really help turn things around for Alpacas.
Look where Preds is right now, in behind 3 members of Smileyface. There will be a collapse here. Stealth wears off. There's the taunt back in. Big chunk damage down onto Ferrari. Half HP, and the ultimate from Preds won't get it done just yet. Ferrari stays alive. Oh, but Pretty Prime takes a portal right into the back line. Shotgun blast into the Achilles. And Cold Alpacas perfectly execute a big dive here and 2 kills swing back towards blue.
And there's just the strength of a Ganesh. I mean, you're still in danger here if you're Astia. In fact, I think you are probably just straight up dead, and that's going to be the case. But I think that showcases the good peel he has. Trading that 1 kill for everybody that you just got on the other side, absolutely worthwhile. And it also answers a little bit of the question. I saw this Yanis locked in, and I was wondering, what are we going to see? There's 3 Yanises in my mind. There's the just kind of stereotypical, it's not going to work out, and he's not going to do anything. Maybe at the end of the day, I'm saying he's 1-7, and we glance over it, and it means nothing to us. Then there's the Venenu and the Heroine, right? Those are the 2 options we've seen out of the Pro League. And it feels a little more Venenu-esque from Pretty Prime, definitely more in the fight. But I'm just excited to see it because we've seen both players find success. I just want to know what Pretty Prime's going to do with it.
Oh, blue buff invade turns into team fight here, it seems. Look at the chunk damage, just 1 take of that Ganesh shot will do to you. And Preds walks in, could be a double kill over the horizon here. Kana will clean up the second. Smileyface thought they had a chance on that blue buff. I suppose they did drop it, but Cold Alpacas are going to return the favor.
All right. Well, there's Ganesh in the game. He just had a really awesome ult. This is where I get to stand on a soapbox for a little bit and talk about how great Dharmic Pillars is. But right now it's Coast that's in danger, so it's going to have to wait as he gets pressured on.
B to use. Will that save his life? For the time being, does not seem like it. The snipes will buy him time, but you look at the minimap, nobody's coming to save your life this time. Agent will be close by to help out, but Echrome will end up grabbing the kill there. But
Agent.
Has E-Chrome bought enough time? Or has Vapor's Coast bought enough time? He sure has. Agent, unfortunately, goes down. And so ultimately, Gore, you look at the long con there. Vapor's Coast is always going to die, but opened up a door to a return kill.
Reluctant acceptance there from Agent, right? Like, you're just like, you know what?
I guess.
I'm dead, but I'm not getting out of here. There's nothing I can do. He's half of the team's deaths, which is beneficial and non-beneficial at the same time. Like, as much as I was saying, hey, it's great if he's the guy dying, you do still need a little bit of that gold and experience to get going your way as a support player to start feeling that impact. But he's got his ult up, and I like saving it there. Your respawn's going to be low enough that you would rather have it for the next life than try to save yourself. Also, you are dead anyway, so there's no real way you're going to try and save yourself and get out of there. But I think rolling it right on back to where these two are going to be impactful is actually support ult versus support ult, right? Agent having that revive, it's going to be crucial. On someone like Ferrari, Bevy Monster, even E-Chrome, that's extending the life and extending the damage potential of your team. For Cold Alpacas, that Dharmic Pillars, the slow, the percentage damage, or the damage that it's going to do, as well as the prots that it's going to shred, just make it very difficult, I think, for Smileyface to feel confident getting as aggressive as they were towards the end of last game.
E-Chrome, airstrike will not find the damage. He's going to aggro the tower here. Vapor's Coast nearly eats the 1v1. Watch out, Pretty Prime in behind. Ultimate connects for some big damage. Mana somewhat low. Will E-Chrome suffer death here? Of course he will, and Pretty Prime is within that close of range. And so just a bit too much bit off there from the Smileyface Hunter. It looks like he had the 1v1, maybe if that airstrike hit, but instead Cold Alpacas pull back another kill.
And I think that's just aggression. I like that ult. I think E-Chrome is maybe feeling himself a little bit from last game, though. That's his first death in the 2 games so far. Now Gunter, as well as I believe just all of Smileyface, they had to play carefully. I think they've lost a lot of pressure this early game. It's vastly different from last time. I mean, last game we're talking about 200 to 300 gold that's, you know, shying between both teams, bouncing back and forth. They're down 1,000, a little over, almost 2,000 that comes through. And that's going to lose them pressure around the Gold Fury. It's going to start losing them pressure, granted 2 minutes until it spawns, but around a Pyromancer. There's a lot of things that Cold Alpacas are set up for pre-10 minutes to just get aggressive with. And I think it's just that Prime is much more mobile. I mean, he's 3-0-1. This Yanis is working way better than the Vulcan did for him in terms of at least kill potential, even though the damage is still about the same. And you're seeing Preds be just as active, but I think it's the duality of it. Having your mid laner there with you is just making things feel so much more synergistic for Cold Alpacas.
Right, it's the next few minutes, it feels like, for Preds, where Preds in game 1, remember, was on a killing spree to start off the game, but then things really slowed down. So it's the next phase of the game. It's bridging that gap between early and mid that's going to be massive here for Preds. And at the pace they're playing, the Cold Alpacas right now, it seems like that'll be there over the horizon. Smileyface definitely at a big deficit here, 2K gold, behind. That's not a lead we saw until midway through game number 1, after a couple of the bigger respawning objectives out in that jungle were taken down. So Smileyface definitely climbing up a hill here. Vapor's Coast was being looked at for a moment by Ferrari, still has those beads and of course the snipes as well. So maybe a fruitless effort to try to put too much pressure over here in the long lane.
I mean, you can try to lock it down. Jingwei, not the easiest. Rom, not the easiest to try and find kills on.
Right.
I'm actually surprised we've seen as many deaths over there as we have. But granted, now we're level 10, especially with beads coming online soon enough. Aegis probably picked up for both of these hunters as well. I doubt we're going to see a lot of action over there that involves anything less than a large gank. If it's a 1v1, you never know.
Oh, Vapor's Coast is just hitting more shots, bar none. Snipes now, could get it done. He set up the kill for himself. Will he knock it down? Oh, yeah, Vapor's Coast with the final snipe. There's a 1v1 for you. E-Chrome might need to think twice about going for those fights again here in the future. Now, a true 1v1, no help from anyone else on the Cold Alpacas, goes over to Vapor's Coast.
Look, and you just can't help but root for him in that kind of instance. And there's going to be the block coming through. A good save onto the Capriel, but it's not going to be enough to proc.
Ferrari solo here. Preds, you're taking the tower, my friend. Ferrari goes back in, gets the kill. What a turnaround there from Smileyface. Just a small silver lining, Gore. The gold lead has grown for the Cold Alpacas, but important to slow down this Circuit.
All right, not the end of the world, but not the greatest decision I've seen in the last couple of games either. So I think it comes through. I like what Preds is doing, again, because that proc doesn't come through and you don't get the regen life from Ferrari. he's still pretty low in there, and if you're able to get a little closer, if it was slightly different pathing from Ferrari, Preds finds himself a kill, is probably out of there, and we're having a different conversation right now. But just taking too many shots there, finishes up that sledge, and so now is in a position to be a little bit more tanky. It gives up that death. Again, not the end of the world. Your team still has a 2,000 gold lead, but those are the moments. I mean, we had kind of mentioned it last game. That's where it started to feel pivotal, was that first death from Preds. He stopped being as effective afterward. We didn't get to see as much from him, and I want to know if he's going to be able to keep the pressure up, if this Circuit's going to be a little more potent than it was last time, because for the most part, the essence of this team is very similar. Again, the supports have changed out, so maybe there's less aggression coming from them, but there's still a lot of setup potential that comes through. It's just, can Cold Alpacas maintain this lead they've cultivated?
Right. We've seen the Circuit build kind of transform from full-on assassin into kind of hybrid bruiser, and that's where Preds, as you point out there, Gore, is starting to work towards. We actually never got a great chance, because as the build started to unfold for Ferrari, action really started to spring up there in game number 1. It looks like Ferrari's going to be starting off his build similar to how he did in game 1, and it was the attack speed on the Achilles. The desk definitely worded maybe some concerns with that mindset, but Gore, looks like we're going to get another look and another data point for how the attack speed Achilles could work.
And I feel like Aggro is the same way with this. I will disagree with a build, but if it works, I can't argue against it. You know what I mean? Like, it'll be something where, you know, you can talk about optimizations, how things are going, but if it works, it works, and that's ultimately what Ferrari's going for.
And a couple ultimates start to swing here for the Cold Alpacas, but do not connect, or the big ultimate in Pretty Prime does not connect. It's an abduct back in onto Astia, immediately followed by the stun. Can Ferrari weave in the execute? No, instead he gets executed, pulled right back into the Ganesh ultimate here. Kana goes big, chasing down the back line of Smileyface. Preds is there to capitalize on the damage, but watch out, Bevy Monster alone in the back line. This is what happened in game 1. These split-up fights just never benefited the Cold Alpacas, and Smileyface keep Gunter alive here. He'll flicker it away. Bevy Monster jumps back in, but he's been left alone. May Porsche Coast adds one as well. It's a 3-for-2 fight. Cold Alpacas out ahead.
And that's narrow. I mean, unless you get that re-engage from Smileyface, a little awkward at that, you are walking away at a deficit. You're losing a 2-for-1 overall for Cold Alpacas. So being able to get those extra couple of kills, not only massive for them, but a pretty big investment over there on the duo lane. And slowing down Smileyface at this point. Again, the conversation with this Merlin has to come through. The burn potential on objectives is going to be crucial. He doesn't die there. As long as he's not got anyone around him, then you don't have to worry too much about the Gold Fury, the Pyromancer, the Fire Giant disappearing just yet. The Cold Alpacas need a way to find those just a smidge cleaner, right? I mean, you get in there, you get aggressive, you get everyone really low, but it's Bevy Monster, you had highlighted, jumping into the backline again that causes the disruption. And I think it's trying to find that appropriate amount of control. A lot of the cooldowns from Astia were used just to zone out for the purple buff, and so by the time you're trying to peel, you didn't have anything to really get them off of your carries, and it's maybe just using those a little bit better to make sure the fight goes cleaner, and then you get a Gold Fury after that fight. Instead of having to go back to base and wonder what you can do for the next one, you are able to then pick up the stuff that you need to find to cultivate this lead even further. 3,000 gold, make it 5,000, make it 10,000, and get yourself something solid.
Gunter and Agent both alone here. Gunter will have to use his beads to stay alive. Red buff invade gone right with Cold Alpacas, and Astia will pick that one up. These jungle fights, just brutal to fight against a Ganesh. But Smileyface don't really have a choice in the matter, I suppose. I mean, the Gold Fury's in the jungle just because Ganesh has a good ult. You can't walk away from some of these fights, but Smileyface wants to engage. Astia has found a couple. Look at the silences. Locking down Agent, locking down E-Chrome as well, who will have to airstrike away. Ferrari and Bevy Monster, the two-man dive into the backline is still there, but Bevy has been left alone here. Not enough healing in the world to survive 1v5. Smileyface has exited stage right. Cold Alpacas find a couple kills, and a Fury as well.
That feels like there has to be some sort of miscommunication, right? Like, there's no reason Bevy, like, he gets a sick ult in that moment. I mean, he hits, what, 4 or 5 people with Lord of the Afterlife, something that you never get to really see. And there's no one around. I mean, you've got Merlin over there in mid, you've got E-Chrome over here farming and about to get farmed himself. It just feels like there was a disconnect onto when they wanted to go in and where they wanted to fight. And so it just leads to nothing. In fact, it leads to more of a lead, a heavy lead for Cold Alpacas. I think Smileyface had a decent chance at winning, at least pulling a couple kills back in their favor there. But ultimately, I guess just letting it sit and playing the long con, trying to wait for this. But I'm going to be honest, Cold Alpacas, this kind of composition and just this team, realistically, with a smidge of a lead, is a team I have to be worried about. I think Smileyface need to be worried about this and are relying maybe too much on some of that late game potential, but you've got a 2-level deficit over there in the duo lane, 1 in each other role. That's frightening, I think, to say the least. You need to sit back and farm up. And there's not a lot of room to wiggle in that. In fact, at this point, I wouldn't be surprised if Cold Alpacas start putting more pressure on.
It's got to be a comeback player of the game for Preds. Not that his specific game started off poorly. It's just the turnaround from game 1 has been big. And the question was, can we transition that early game into mid, into late? And so far, Preds has been able to say yes on the same pick from game number 1. Pretty prime, playing these high execution picks to a T here. At least the Giannis in game 2. Pyromancer will not be stolen away. Cold Alpacas will keep this one in their court. 3-0-6 for Pretty Prime on the Honest. How will that KDA look after this fight, though? Astia locked into his own cage. Oh, but the portal is there from Pretty Prime. Big damage from Gunter over the wall. Has Gunter done enough to give Smileyface a good fight here? For the time being, maybe. Pretty Prime gets the portal onto Agent, and the Kepri is executed without having used his ultimate. Bevy Monster now being dove on. Kana finishes off that kill. Another good fight here for the Cold Alpacas, especially if they can finish off a couple of these final kills. Killing spree for Vaporish Coast. 3 for none. It could get worse.
I mean, this guy's got a pint under his name. He's got snipes under his belt. He is ready to keep on going. I love the way Cold Alpacas tackle that. First off, they don't drop a single person in that fight, which is incredible. Just juggling of health bars and who's aggressing where. But Astia, a great silence, puts down Ferrari, and you leave Echrome alive, but ultimately he's not able to get anything. Not even the tier 1 over here. Big swing and kills uptick, 17-6 for them, a massive 7K lead at this point for Gold, and you can feel the impact of that in the fights. I'm looking at this team, you know, I'm throwing it out the metric of the 18-minute Fire Giant kind of being the average that we're used to seeing in the SPL. This feels like a team that in the next couple of minutes could feasibly aggress onto that, and at least contrary to last game, find the first one that they aggress onto as opposed to having a big steal come in from Smileyface.
And Gore, now maybe we really do start to express some concern for the Achilles build. I suppose in a situation where your team is ahead and you're feeling confident in your ability to stay alive in the backline of these fights, you know, maybe that's a situation where Ferrari is feeling the most comfortable, but he's going to continue down that build path, and it has just not worked out for this Achilles so far in the same way it had in game 1, or Bevy Monster for that matter. At 1-4, Ferrari's got some serious turning around to do, I think, to get back into this game and give Smileyface a chance.
And I'm wondering if he's still going to want to go into the Blood Forge, if he even makes it that far, right? Depending, if the pace of the game continues going at this rate, I don't know that we get to answer that question, but if he goes into the Blood Forge, that's an item that I think helps alleviate that pressure and give you, you know, that shielding every time you get that elimination. But the problem is you have to start getting eliminations for that to proc and feel important. 1-4-1, he's been a part of a third of the kills, admittedly, but so few and far in between for Smileyface to ever find a proc like that. So even if he goes into some of the same itemization, I just don't know that it's going to have the same benefit because they're not driving with this. And so that Achilles maybe would benefit from a nice swing going into something a little more tanky.
Well, Preds is going to keep at it here. Oh my god, there's just way too much damage to deal with. Ferrari will get the Kepri ult. The final snipes there from Vaporish Coast nearly finalized the kill, but a bit too far downrange, and Ferrari will stay alive. But a big ult, and you lose Echrome, and Cold Alpacas suddenly at Gore have the opportunity to knock down some of these big map objectives in the long lane.
And now, I mean, getting this aggressive, again, no Fire Giant, and they're looking at taking down a tier 2. That's already a massive advantage, being able to expose a Phoenix, get yourselves in a position to aggress into Smileyface's base. It feels as though they've just completely turned things around, and a lot of it, like, contrary to what I would have thought, is the aggression this game. I mean, this Ganesh, 15 assists out of 18 kills. I think Astia has been much better here than on the Hercules last time around, and I really like the pressure that they're getting because of it. Like you had mentioned earlier, the Dharmic Pillars cause a lot of awkwardness in the jungle fights, which is so far where they've been dominating every single time. But on top of that, the counter matchups that they're going for on Smileyface, that is where the executes were very potent last game, don't feel as good anymore. Okay, cool, you're going to try to channel something. I'm going to silence you. Maybe you're CC immune for a little bit, but you know, you're not going to be able to find these as readily available, and Cold Alpacas have also been doing a good job of body blocking. And that stopped Ferrari from being that important. The damage from Gunter hasn't felt, you know, particularly, well, effective, I guess is the best word for it. Like, there just hasn't really been a lot that I can grab for that feel like benefits on Smileyface, other than that so far they've been able to get out alive some of the time.
Gunter's got the Soul Reaver now, Spear of Deso, first item in there. Obviously Chronos pendant for a little extra uptime on some of those cooldowns, so he has the itemization to turn around some of these fights. Granted, a little bit behind Pretty Prime and what he's got built out. Both mid laners have Chronos and Soul Reaver, but Pretty Prime with that Soul Gem is going to add a little extra oomph to that shotgun blast if he's able to get in range to do so. The big question now is how confident does Smileyface feel around this Fire Giant? We're 20 minutes in, you're at a 10k gold deficit. Effectively everyone, not even effectively, literally everyone is behind in some capacity. You've got to get a pick to feel confident, and maybe it's here. Astia stays alive. Dharmic Pillar's not great this time, but Agent isn't in range. Pretty Prime there, procs the Soul Gem, but won't get the kill. Vapor's Ghost sure will. Double kill now, could it be more? Triple kill on the snipes. Echrome into the back of the speed buff pin, but Echrome will not be long for this world unless he finds a way to dash away. That's what Jingwei is great at. Big fight for this ROM, big fight for Vaporish Coast.
That's one of the only times Agent had a really clutch ult that might have been worse off. I guess you extend their life, but it's one of those moments where you pull them into the same scenario you're in, which is just nothing but weighted death on the other side. And maybe Smileyface can finally pull something back in that in the form of Preds, but honestly, again, I think it's a little more worthwhile. Last time it was a support that died when the Fire Giant comes through. I think your jungler, as much as you maybe don't want them because they're going to dive into the back line or at least be the piercing damage onto the front line that you could have, especially in this circuit, that hybrid build really enables it to be a little more okay. Vaporish Coast has it, and at the end of the day, that's what I'm happy with.
Gore, you know what I love is the Spear of the Magus pickup here for Astia. I mean, you're in a position where you've got the Pridwin, you've got the Thieves. Look, Ganesh hurts anyway.
Yeah.
These Dharmic Pillars are going to be swinging. Now you get 10 flat pen and then 110 magical power. Look, when you're this far ahead, I suppose it opens up the opportunity to get a power item this early on. Sometimes you finalize your build with it, but not this time for Astia.
I mean, it just solidifies, I think, something that we've been seeing. A few people in the Pro League have done this, right? They'll get a couple of power items at the very end of their build, because once you have that Thebes plus one prot item, depending on how, you know, I guess worried you are, right? Maybe I have physical protections. If I'm not that worried about magical protections, I don't need to stress about it. And so far, I would argue that's where Astia is. I mean, what, you're taking a little bit every now and then from Gunter and maybe a little bit from Agent, but you're not stressed about that too much. Go ahead and go for it. Get the damage down instead, because it's causing so much trouble. I mean, Agent, countless times, and Bevy Monster as well, has been caught out by these Dharmic Pillars, and it's the worst, one of the best abilities because of this, but the worst case scenario to be caught in, you either stand in the box to avoid the damage and the prot shred, or you run through it and get hit by the damage, the prot shred, and the slow, and all of a sudden you're dead either way. It's just the worst of both worlds, and I think Astia has been placing those ults wonderfully. This is just a great item.
Man, you plus me on a cast where Ganesh gets picked.
We love Ganesh.
People are going to be leaving thinking Ganesh is the far and away best support in the game, bar none. I mean, he's very good, but definitely a lot of viable. You're right, I'm about to start making the case on why he is far and away the best support. Right, we're about to dive into that. We'll see if maybe the Spear of the Magus can be worth its weight in gold here underneath this Phoenix dive on the left-hand side. Who else but Vaporish Coast starts off the fighting here. Kana healing out for the back line at the double. Yet again, could it get worse? It's a dodge roll in now for Vaporish Coast. There's
that's three.
There from Ferrari. Quad kill for Vaporish Coast.
Keep going, baby!
He's in the back line. He's got to work himself in. I'm not sure he's got the 1v1 potential. At half HP, Echrome still there. The timer melting away on the pentakill, and Echrome won't hand it over. Quad kill for Vaporish Coast.
The Pentakid, just shy of getting another one that comes through. Competitively, this guy has been devastating since he jumped onto the scene, so it's not surprising to see him get another quadra. 13, 2, and 6, Dave, and he's about to get this kill if Echrome stays in here a little bit too long. The trades are not going quite the way they want, but I mean, this is just dangerous territory for Smileyface at this point. 2 Phoenixes down. If you do not deal with this ROM at the beginning of the fight, you get out of that fight at this point. I'm unconcerned with a lot of the other. Pretty Prime's 4-0 and 14. He's undying and he's got a lot of assists. But I think if you can kill Coast, then the rest of it becomes manageable. But if he's not dead, just abort. Get out of there. You're done. The mission is not going to work out. Fall back as far as you can.
Seems like the mindset now might be on to Game 3 for both of these teams. Vaporish Coast has been unmanageable to deal with here for Smileyface. I mean, think back to what, 15 minutes ago, you're looking at E-Chrome feeling confident enough to 1v1 Vaporish Coast, and that it really seems, Gore, I mean, this is a slippery slope argument, but you're looking at that 1v1 that E-Chrome bit off a little bit too much, and Vaporish Coast was able to turn around the kill. And then a minute or two later, Vaporish Coast just straight up wins a natural 1v1 against E-Chrome. Seems like that's where the ball started to get rolling here. In a small moment that maybe made a big difference. Now it's a Primal Fury for the cold Alpacas, and I think it's smart by Smileyface not to contest.
I mean, even more supporting evidence for that moment being kind of a backbreaker was the fact that Vaporish Coast, I think, was 1-2-2 when he dodges out that death, and then becomes 2-2-2 with the solo kill, and since then, not a single death, right? He has not died since those early game moments, and even being able to survive under that tier 2, I think just showcases how much and how pivotal this game has been from the duo lane. And as much as, you know, I want to shy away from it, but I have to circle back to where the assists are going. I mean, look at the rest of the team. 15, 13, 14, 20. They are all so heavily invested in getting these kills that Vaporish Coast is finding all of the last hits and has a great build for dealing damage and shredding people. But it's the setup that everybody else has. Pretty Prime is doing a lot, but the CC that is locking people down and leaving them just dangling for Vaporish Coast to hunter them out of his mind is insane for him, and so he just gets to play his role. He's having a great time.
Yeah, brilliant game to be a hunter here. A lot less thorns to deal with for Vaporish Coast. Fire Giant started up now by the cold Alpacas. Smileyface, they're just going to move out and try to clear off some of these fire minions. Gore, the objective seems to be clear here for the cold Alpacas. Left side Phoenix gone, mid lane Phoenix gone. Let's group up as 5 and push down this right-hand lane. Just tie it up all nicely.
Everyone's distracted at this point. I mean, you've got everything except for the Pyromancer on the map, so you're not really stressed about them taking objectives on the return. And you've got fire minions defending your tier 1 towers in mid and left, and those aren't really going to be going down anytime soon. Like you said, get this tower, get your lead to an almost massive 20,000. Still a little shy, but getting to that point, you should be able to knock down this Phoenix, and if you win this fight, and pretty heavily, then you could go straight for the Titan afterward. It just depends on where Preds and Prime go. That portal, and especially the ult setup, is going to be crucial for this fight.
The good news is for Smileyface, despite the Fire Giant buff, this will be the closest fight we've had because Cold Alpacas have been maxed out on levels and build for the last few minutes, and Smileyface has been playing catch-up. So, in that regard, this is where Smileyface might feel the most comfortable that they have, but you've got left side fire minions, mid lane fire minions. They'll be joining the base shortly. Left side Phoenix is going to respawn. That's something to look at. So somebody's going to have to work with those fire minions on the left-hand side unless they want them to take down that Phoenix once more. Slow going here for both of these teams. Never fun, never easy to dive a Phoenix, but Fred wants to get things started all at once. Cold Alpacas will storm the Smileyface base. Nobody's been killed off just yet. Agent gets half of his HP melted away by Pretty Prime. Ferrari has to execute away to stay alive. Pretty Prime rampaging, says I can do some killing as well. And look at where Freds is, nearly gets the kill on a Ferrari here. It's only one Gore. The right side Phoenix will fall, and left will and mid will as well.
I mean, all 3 Phoenixes down. You're fighting a 4v5, 45 seconds without this Osiris. It's a great time to go back in. But Preds is low health, same thing. I mean, Astia, not necessarily low health, 3/4, but you have to be careful when you engage in the Titan room. It's still enough damage on the side of Smileyface that you can throw here, so be very careful with your selection. Ferrari's pretty low. You know Agent's ult is down. The only thing you have to worry about is the return damage from E-Chrome and Gunter. Otherwise, this is a pretty good shakeup for Cold Alpacas. They just have to figure out how to crack this shell. I'm still turning towards Pretty Prime, a portal to set something up, some sort of CC.
This is the old walk in and deal damage to the Titan move now, and look at how fast it's going down. Cold Alpacas were never going to be denied. It's the Vaporish Coast show here in Game 2. My man will finish 13-2-7. Absurd. At 5-0-14 for Pretty Prime out of the mid lane, hard to win with scorelines like that. against.
I mean, yeah, you get to see, yeah, you get to see. I think a lot of their potency to the point where I'm even thinking like, oh man, you go into this Titan room, you got to be very careful. That Titan's dead before you could even think of trying to find a fight. The CC doesn't even connect, and that Titan's at one hit. I don't think they were stressed at all going into that. They just needed to be careful for it. And if they get another game like that, then they're moving forward pretty easily.
And we knew this is what the cold Alpacas were capable of. So finally showing us some life here in Game 2. We're all tied up. Tiebreaker Game 3 right after this.
Well, he's known as the Penta Kid, but he didn't quite get there in this one. He was just the Quadra Kid, the Triple Kid, and then the multiple double kill kid. 13-2, I believe, was the final scoreline for Vaporish Coast. As Mifflin, we're only 2 games in to this SWC Wildcard weekend, and yet I'm willing to go out on a limb and say that Rom is he's pretty good. He's pretty good. He's kind of hard carried both of these first 2 games.
That's a weird hill to die on, Aggro. I think Rom might be one of the worst. No, I'm just kidding. Absolutely. I think both of these teams are going to be putting a lot of respect onto that pick in the future. E-Chrome looks incredibly good on it. It's kind of hard to remember once Vaporish Coast kind of blows up his spot like he did in Game 2. But yeah, E-Chrome had a good game on Rom. Vaporish Coast absolutely 1 versus 9s, essentially, on this pick. Picks up some solo kills in lane, picks up multiple multi-kills. It truly is the ABC show between these 2 teams.
It's been crazy to watch. It's just been whoever seems to get this little bit of a lead pushes it perfectly. This was the triple. The Quadra is on the left side Phoenix, which is where we're going to head next. Of course, Prime setting him up with that snipe on the Gunter, who didn't get to play that team fight, unfortunately enough for him.
You know what I just realized, Miff, is that E-Chrome died but got Kefri rezzed. He actually did get the Penta, it's just it didn't count. He got robbed.
All right, yeah, this is the Penta Kid then. Yeah, I mean, I'm willing to give it to him. But he has the opportunity. Look at this, Aggro. He can just go in right here. Dash in, get that man. But he didn't want it. We called it discipline behind the stage. You know, I would have liked to see him go for it in that situation. But in my heart, he's going to always be the Penta Kid.
Well, 13-2 and 7. I'm sure he's doing just fine. He'll sleep fine tonight. 26,000 player damage for him as well. Highest in the game by 10K clean. Too easy for Coast in this one. And that brings us to getting ready for game number 3, where who's going to be first pick, and if you're not first pick, are you banning Rom, is kind of where I feel like we're at already.
I think it would be surprising for me if Rom made it through here. There's absolutely no way they leave it available because of how much impact it's had. We've already seen that they're not really thinking that Cupid's that runner-up. They're not really prioritizing at all, meaning that Rom really is head and shoulders above within this EU meta. Don't give it up. Just don't let it happen to you again.
I agree. I think that if you're going to be doing things like picking Jingwei instead of the Cupid, just ban the Rom. If you don't have to worry about how good Cupid is, just ban the Rom. That's what I think we should be seeing here in game number 3, as we expect Smileyface to be in first pick position. It is as it is their choice coming off the loss, and first pick has won both of the games so far here in this set. It's been a lot of prioritization on Pretty Prime if you're Smileyface during the picks and bans, and a lot of prioritization on the front line if you're Cold Alpacas. It's going to be the Circuit ban first and foremost, though. In both games, despite the loss in game 1, Preds did get off to a very good start on this pick.
Yeah, I really like Circuit in the current meta. This more bruiser-centric build allows him to act as a facilitator, but he's not really lacking too much in terms of 1v1 potential because of the true damage that the ultimate affords him as well. I think it's just a very versatile pick that you can play multiple ways. If you pull a lead on Circuit, pick up the Heartseeker, go into the Brawler's Beat Stick, be this absolute assassin. If you're from even, you want the lead, go tanky. I think that's really why Smileyface is putting so much respect on it, knowing that there's really not a counter matchup here. But I'd be surprised to see where we see Ferrari go in this game. That Achilles that he's been reprising throughout the entirety of the set kind of got blown up.
Definitely was not as successful in game number 2 as it was in game 1. There's already a lot of switch-ups here in picks and bans. No Persephone ban by Smileyface. No Guan Yu or Yamoja ban is going to come through here from Cold Alpacas. At least one of those characters is going to make it through with the switch-up, as they do decide to take away that ROM as we were advocating for. And now Cold Alpacas have to make a choice. They leave open the Yamoja, which is surprising because I think the Yamoja has the higher ceiling between her and Guan Yu, but also maybe a lower floor. Maybe they're hoping the Yamoja isn't as well practiced here on Smileyface.
Yeah, I think that this is a heat check for the rest of the tournament as well. If you're belt slap right now and you're watching this game and you realize that Smileyface forego the emoji in this top pick slot, it opens you up to so much weakness in your draft just because the relative strength of this god. Belt slap, if they're watching, would say, oh, they don't like Yamoja, we could just leave it up and we'll get it for ourselves every single time, or force them into allocating one of their bans. So I think that even if Smileyface aren't really capable of playing Yamoja at the highest level, they're right to make this pick happen if they're keeping their eyes on the rest of the tournament.
Heimdall, Osiris are the response picks. Interestingly enough, no Persephone prioritization. Clearly that was a pick that Smileyface was worried about on Prime's end, but they don't decide to go that way as they pick up the Heimdall and the Osiris, giving Coast one of those priority picks. And yeah, Smileyface go, sure, man. Whatever you guys want. Yamoja, yes, please. Persephone, still open. Yes, please. We'll be taking one of those. I feel like they've got to be pretty happy with where they are as they go to the Ho Yi, again, noteworthy instead of the Cupid.
Yeah, interesting that they're following the tier list so rigorously with these top two, and then Cupid's still available. Yep. You can go to the anything else, really. Ho Yi's not really a god that I would consider a pick priority. Sure, you've got kill potential, and it's decent with the Yamoja, but you still have gods like On Her. Even Apollo's been seeing a little bit of reprisal in high tier ranked as well. So I'm surprised that we're seeing this Ho Yi, but I'm interested to see how it plays out. And you know what? I trust him. Echrome had a really good game 1. If he pops off, Ho Yi's a no better god to do it on.
I also really like the combination of Ho Yi and Persephone ultimates. Persephone ult keeps everybody in an area. Ho Yi ultimate destroys an area. I think those usually end up working out pretty well together. As we do see an Achilles ban come through, interestingly enough, even though that has not been super successful overall, despite the game 1 victory, we see it banned away because of the Khepri ultimate on the other side. Don't want to give them a free execute, as they'll go with the other execute that's widely available in the Thanatos. Something tells me that Ferrari is not going to drop down to the Alquang.
No way. He's not Johnny, right? The only guy running that pick right now inside of the EU SCC. I'm surprised that we saw this kind of focus on these execute bans. Normally we only see executes come through when you're worried about gods like Cthulhu, but that's already been addressed in the first phase. Maybe it's just a matchup knowledge between these two teams, knowing that Ferrari really does prioritize that play style. But now that it's been dealt with, we get to see a whole new look for Smileyface's jungler.
Naja is the hover here. Naja is not a god we see a whole lot of these days, and Miff, you do not seem particularly convinced. I mean, if we had a Ra or a Thoth or the Vulcan or something like that, I think the Naja makes a little bit more sense. The best thing that I think I'm seeing out of this Naja is that if you're using it as a semi-execute, the Khepri can't ult the target that you're hitting with Windfire Wheels. Outside of that, I'm not seeing it.
There's just so much pre-fire as well for that Naja ultimate. Khepri can reaction ult the Windfire Wheels every single time. If you're worried that he's going to die up there, there's almost no reason your teammates should die. I'm going to obey Stan Aggro. Sino is, for my money, the best player to have ever touched Naja. He's the best one to have ever done it. And he has gone on record recently, in recent months, saying that this god is just incredibly hard to play around. Not only are you setting up for your team, you're setting up for the enemy team as well. They know where you're landing. And I think that between these two drafts, if Naja ults anyone, it might just be Cold Alpacas who have the advantage. You're going to land into a Bakasura ult, or a Golden Apple, or even a Khepri root. This Naja's going to pick his spots very wisely.
When neither Sino nor Cherio are playing Naja, should you be playing Naja? That's that's the way I look at it. Probably not, is the answer to that. We'll see if Ferrari can prove us wrong here in game number 3, as Bakasura is the final pick. Another leap to get out of this Yemoja ult. I think that's why we see Prime go with this Discordia as well. Another way to get out of that ultimate. What do you think here, Mifflin? Who's moving on here in game number 1?
It's so weird, right? Smileyface has Persephone and Yemoja. You almost never make money betting against those two gods on the same team. And they've also got Sun Wukong, a rising star out of that solo lane. But this Naja, man, I'm so concerned about how well that's going to play in the 3v3, which is going to hinder Persephone and Yemoja at the same time if that's where they decide to fight. Whereas Cold Alpacas have this much more standard draft. I think I got to go with CA here, man.
Wow, we'll see if Yemoja Persephone can do enough, or if Ferrari can prove us wrong here on the Naja in the game-clinching number 3.
Man, we kept some standard between Game 1 and Game 2 as far as drafts go, and there's a little bit of trickle over here, Gormizer, into Game 3. There's a lot to look at, I think, in this one to see how this game is going to pan out. Maybe we start off with the jungle, in that we've got 2 new picks here to this set. Naja for Ferrari instead of the Achilles, and then Preds on that late-game carry in the Bakasura.
Yeah, it's something that we see a lot in Europe, not necessarily on Cold Alpacas all the time. Again, I think Mifflin had hit it on the head a little earlier, but typically something I'm used to seeing Johnny and talking about Johnny playing overall. Not something that comes through too much. But it's so weird. I mean, the desk had kind of touched on this, but Smileyface, look, Wukong, even though we haven't seen him a lot this set, still one of the best solo laners that we've had in just the Pro League and in the Challenger circuit for the last few months. Same thing, Persephone, Yemoja, top tier. And then you get down to like Hugi. I can vibe with Hugi. I like playing him, and I think he's something that can at least hold his own over here, although definitely not following the tier list. And then the Naja, there's just a lot of question marks around Smileyface and their success here, whereas I think Cold Alpacas have something that's going to work for them. And you look at this team, and you can see exactly what they're going for throughout every portion of the game. Pretty Prime, as well as Astia, can control early game. Kana, when he joins into the fights, is going to get to the back line alongside Preds, give him a through line to just shred through literally anyone that stands in his way. The Yemoja's going to cause some trouble for the Bakasura, but outside of that, I don't know that there's a lot to stop Cold Alpacas if they get the same lead they did last game.
Gore, I'm with you. I want to make that clear. I still just can't believe we're considering a world where a Yemoja Persephone first 2 picks are potentially on the back foot. That is ridiculous. If one of the 2 of them gets through, you're thinking you got away with murder, but Smileyface get both with their first 2 picks. That's wild to me, but I agree. I think maybe some of the concern is how that all meshes with one another, but obviously a strategy here for Smileyface going into this game. So the Ganesh pick for Asti last time is going to be the Khepri over here this time, and really for the first time since Game 1, Gore. Now we're maybe seeing a difference in kill pressure and maybe setup potential in that duo lane with Agent on the Yemoja, with Astia maybe playing second fiddle for the first few levels on the Khepri.
Yeah, that bouncing bubble Moonstrike just combo that is going to come down from Agent, even though he'll be low Omi for so much of this game, it's just so much pressure. It doesn't necessarily matter who your hunter is. Like, when we see it paired with Rom, it's ridiculous how much control you have over here. But even just as your own, you should be clearing the wave a lot faster.
Well, Gore, you pointed out low Omi, and you're good to do so. Agent didn't really have enough there to turn around a lot of the damage. Wasn't feeling too much pressure. Of course, it's still early game Heimdall, early game Khepri, so never any true kill pressure there, but Agent still realizing he's got to play carefully here at half HP. Will miss the final stun there. So now, you know, as the story has been throughout this game, all of this early game setup flowing through the junglers throughout games 1 and 2 here in this game, and then the hunters capitalizing on it. And so Preds here, a good opportunity to start to exert some pressure. He'll make his way over to the blue buff, chop that one down. Kana able to move back and pick it up for himself there, but maybe that's not even so much the mindset, Gore. You look at this Bakasura, obviously you can get involved early, but you just kind of want to farm and get to a point where you can jump into the back line and swing away.
Yeah, I think around this level 5, once we see Preds tick up to that, we might see some aggression, but Persephone's not necessarily the easiest person to lock down over here in mid. Maybe you shift your potential over towards the dual lane, and then, well, with Riptide available and Echrome being Hu Yi, there's not a lot of people that are easy to lock down over there. Oh, maybe we'll go solo lane. Well, that's a Wukong. I don't know where he's going to find pressure. I think that's where my problem is right now with Cold Alpacas. Everybody on Smileyface has good disengage and good self-peel, or at least some sort of self-peel that's going to be able to get them out of there. And so I think this Bakasura, maybe not even through choice of his own, is going to be forced to just sit back and farm. And I'm also interested to see, because it's such a distinct style difference from what we got to see out of the Serket 2 games in a row. I mean, Serket, hybrid build, jump in, setup, God. And now Bakasura, hyper carry, late game, auto attack base, like almost nothing in similarity outside of the fact that they're both assassins and they can both use abilities that come through. I'm just excited to see what Preds is going to bring for this game.
Yeah, it's going to be fun to watch and follow along with. Ferrari then, maybe the onus is a bit more on him to start to connect some of these savages, the Windfire wheels early on here. Astia hits level 5. He'll abduct Agent back in. He'll have to ult himself in order to stay alive. That'll get him out of the grasp of death. Agent unable to finish off the kill. Here comes Preds, first blood in this game, and he'll be able to leap away. Bevy Monster up into the somersault cloud, slams down, pulls back a kill. Over for Smileyface, but how far in is he? Will Kana be able to chase things down? Kana's low mana here, but look at the chase potential, shielding enough. The shell from Agent will get his solo laner out alive.
But now Agent's the one in trouble, right? I mean, and you do all of that to make sure your solo laner stays alive, but you stay between 3 of them in the process. And you use your shell. I think Bevy Monster overcommits in that instance. Gets the kill, though. So at the end of the day, I guess good for the solo laner, not so good for the rest of the team still, as it's a 2-for-1 trade. But I'm really looking at where that pressure comes through. I can't think of anything better for me personally than seeing Preds go for the one person I didn't highlight as being able to escape him easily, where he's able to get the kill on the Naja. Everybody else, if you lock down, it just doesn't go as well. Maybe Agent, but again, as the Guardian scaling comes through, late game Yamoja should be pretty difficult for him to burn through. I just like that that's where the call comes through. You drop the ult, you lock down Naja, and then you find the kill as fast as you can to then pivot somewhere else. Trade your life for it, but I think at the end of the day, that's always going to be the route for this, at least early game Bakasura. Late game, I'm still excited to see what he's able to do if he can continue this route.
Absolutely. I mean, and now, you know, it's just the 1 kill for Preds, so it's not terrifying for Smileyface just yet. Obviously, you want to slow down this Bakasura as much as possible. Sash from Ferrari went searching, but instead it's just going to be a trade on the Oracles. Both teams will snag 1 for themselves. Gore, I think in that fight, we really do start to see some of the strengths of this Osiris, though, as well. This is not a pick that we've seen all that often. I would argue we've seen it more recently from Sino out of the jungle in the SPL than we have just kind of standard out of the solo lane, unless something is just escaping me. But from the last game and now this game, we're really starting to see when an Osiris starts to get just a little bit of a lead, that potential to just jump on in and swing away is near unmatchable.
Yeah, he's just, I think he's just different, right, when it comes down to playing as a warrior. I think the one thing that Osiris is bringing that, you know, you're not getting out of some of the others is the fact that he can be a little more aggressive, right? He has that leap to go in, anti-heal inherent in his kit, so he's good at dealing with people who have lifesteal and things like that. But, I mean, what we've seen in the last couple of games, he's just adept at getting into the backline. And like you said, even though he's not getting picked up too often in the Pro League, he's still getting picked up every now and then. He's kind of behind your King Arthurs, he's behind your Wukongs, depending on where a team is and where they value a Matarasi right now, behind there, but he's still adept at it, and he's making it work here pretty well for Kana.
He's going to get a chance to try to turn around a 2v1 as Bevy Monster and Ferrari are both over here in the solo lane, but won't end up turning out into much more for the time being. Astia was over here as well, so it would have turned into a 3 versus 2 somewhat quickly there. We'll start to slow things down here, as we so often see in a lot of these games. Ferrari, at this point, important for him just to try to keep up now with his Bakasura, and so much of that sometimes means sacrificing gank potential and kill pressure, but Ferrari not happy with it. He blinks in, ult misses. Freds gets an early Kepri ult here. He'll stay alive, but now that ult is worn out. Bevy Monster's likely going to be able to pick up a kill here, depending on where he jumps on down, but Freds is able to stay alive and escape the rest of this fight. This is a bit of a split engagement here. Now Pretty Prime will toss out the apple. Agent being swung away on by Kana. It's a repeat of what we saw a moment ago in the Osiris back in the kill column.
I mean, when it comes down to it, there's two players right now in Europe when I'm looking at solo laners and playing aggressively the way we just saw Kana playing. It's Kana, oh, I guess not even an EU player. I'm thinking of Wolves over there in A as well, somebody that likes to play. And their styles just seem very similar to me, which I guess makes sense when you think of their backgrounds that can come through. But this is just impressive from Cold Alpacas, once again being able to take an early game lead. They're finding, I would say, kind of surprisingly, the Yemoja more often than not in these fights, and being able to shut down Agent, get rid of that healing, get rid of the CC that Yemoja brings, dodge out the River's Rebuke.
Might have lost you there, Gormizer. Unsure if you've lost me or not, but I think your point carries some weight. I think the ability to dodge out some of that early pressure is something that we discussed and we were a little bit nervous about in the early game, especially in picks and bans. We discussed the potential for a couple of the Cold Alpacas picks to jump out of a lot of that engagement. Kana more recently has been feeling plenty comfortable with the counter engage here, and look at this, 3 versus 2 invade. It's going to get worse though for Smileyface. Cold Alpaca starting to rotate it, and Kana on a killing spree. He's got a double kill, 401 now on this Osiris.
There it is again.
Preds will get one as well on a big fight. Preds in the kill feed as well. Cold Alpaca starting to run away with the game.
I mean, Kana right now is the one that I think is running through. You get to see Preds, I mean, 2-1-2. Great for the jungler, great for the Bakasura right now. But Kana at 4-0-2, I mean, we've seen the impact from the solo lane be important. The zoning, the aggression, where they can get into the backline. But he's fragging out. He's finding the kills that are necessary. And if Coast can get to even a similar, slightly similar, half as good late game as he did last time, then I don't know if there's any trend upward for Smileyface. And again, it goes back to what you said earlier. There's a Persephone. There's a Yemoja on this team. It's so hard to discount them. And that's where I think the pivots will come through. A good River's Rebuke, good healing from Agent in the middle of a team fight right there can try to change things around. But I'm actually going to look at the Persephone. If you can get your ult and lock people down and start finding that consistently in the middle of a fight, that's where you find these wins. I don't know that I've actually seen anyone get locked down by this.
That's a great point. I mean, you look at the Cold Alpacas, and a lot of what they want to do is run around free of any encumbrances, and Grasp of Death is a great way of putting that burden over onto the Cold Alpacas. 3 sets of beads will slow some of that down. Kana just kind of walks towards Bevimonta, uses the Osiris ult there as well, so it's ult for ult over in the solo lane. I mean, we've seen this once. I think maybe it was Fine OK. I'm struggling to remember exactly who it was at the SPL level, but it was just a few kills on Osiris early in the game. In the last like 20 minutes, were almost needless to watch because Osiris, it was absurd. I mean, and it started off just like this. I mean, I suppose that's just Warriors in general, but Kana's at a perfect position here, Gore, to kind of flip the script and be the solo laner to start to carry this game in a series that have seen the Hunters really take things over.
And that's really important. I mean, looking at just the year wins, and this is only SBL, I'm not factoring in Challenger Circuit and Open Circuit because there's so many games, but at least for the SBL, Osiris has been relatively unsuccessful. I mean, almost to the point where he's lost about a third or 2/3 of his games, right? He's not necessarily your go-to win-them-all kind of guy for the year, but right here, and like that game you just referenced, it showcases why he can be so prominent, and I think you also have to factor in again some of those jungle games that come through, and you add him with something like this from Coast, I think it's just going to be a deadly late game.
Here's a great interaction. Ferrari wants to ultimate. Porsche Coast says, no sir. It's an abduct back in and pretty prime now in the kill feed for the first time this game. Gunter sent out Persephone ult from elsewhere in the fight, but no chance there. Gora, I think that's just a classic case of a little bit too much there for Ferrari.
Yeah, and I mean, it goes back to what the Deskit said. What is this Naja going to bring? What are they setting up? And where is it going to work out? And I'm kind of still asking myself the same question. At 0-3-1, Ferrari hasn't necessarily showcased any reason to have this one coming through. The stun is always nice. Going up in the air is always nice. But especially in moments like that, you're not going to find the solo potential. You're not seeing some of the best Naja players in the world go to Naja right now. And I think late game, you know, with this build that I'm seeing, at least Sledge looking to go into a shield, this is someone that is looking to be a setup machine similar to the Circuit, but maybe not as potent because you're not throwing them to your teammates, you're locking them down in one spot. And if Astyanax is going to be in a good position, you should be able to find that ult every time.
Oh man, Agent trying to get to the riptide, but here comes Preds, who is absolutely melting. Are you kidding me? With Ferrari here for Peel on the fadeaway shot there, so we'll keep Gunter alive for the time being. There's your heat check, I think, Gore, on where this Bakasura stands. He'll just walk at you. He's got Hasten Katana, he's got Odysseus' bow, and now Gold Fury to build up a little bit extra unless it gets stolen away. Ferrari might have something to say about it. Unfortunately, he will not, but it's a blink back in. This is split from Smileyface. E-Chrome is being run down. You can't return any damage into those thorns. Bevy Monster will try to help out his jungler here. Maybe it's a kill over on Astia, but of course, he's got the Scarab's blessing to stay alive. On the ring bounce will end up blocking it. Best case scenario there for the cold Alpacas. And Kana's still back here. What is going on? This Osiris has been alone in the backline for the last 30 seconds or so. He may end up dying, finally. But it's going to take moving heaven and earth to get this Osiris in the grave.
I mean, it took, what, 4 people in a minute and a half to kill him? Yeah, that's going to be worthwhile for him. 30 seconds in the timeout box. He's going to be able to spend all the gold he just got anyway. I don't think he's sweating it. And I think it's funny, the duality of Osiris, right? If you could just take a perspective of Bevy Monster's last game and a perspective of Kana's this game and see how polarizing it can be. I mean, Bevy Monster did a lot of the same things Kana is doing. Jump into the backline, deal with those guys. But the difference was that Cold Alpacas, when Bevy Monster did it, were turning on him instantly. They were shredding that solo laner, and it seems like Smileyface here aren't doing the same to Kana. He's getting away with a lot. Right there you finally get 4 people looking at him, but admittedly they don't have anywhere else to look. He's in your red buff. The Gold Fury just went down. Where else are you gonna go other than onto the solo laner? If Kana can keep up this amount of pressure, then I have no doubts the success for Preds, Coast, and Prime are going to just continue going forward because I mean, they've got nothing to worry about. They have to focus on this Osiris before they can even get to the carries.
The one silver lining. 2-level lead for E-Chrome over here in the duo lane. He's been able to pull a lead over Vaporish Coast, despite the way the rest of this game is going. Of the 8 kills, 7 of them are split between Agent and Ferrari, and then, of course, Bevy Monster with the 1. So maybe an avenue for some comfort is fighting over here on the left-hand side, keeping E-Chrome in these fights a little bit longer. Crystal will go down, though. Vaporish Coast will stay alive. And Gore, at this point, Vaporish Coast, he's got to realize that his job is to just withstand. I'm going to stay alive in this lane. The rest of my team has got me.
Got your quadra kill last time. Dust called it as like a glorified penta because the revive came through from the Kepri, so even giving it to him. He killed a lot of people last game. He got his game out of the way, right? So you could just chill this time around and be the setup machine and background damage machine that we know that this Heimdall can be. Let Preds take the driver's seat and be the one kind of making things go forward. At this point, honestly, it's more Kana than anybody. But between those two, if you let your right side of the map have this much control in the late game, and as so far they have been, you just have to, like you said, survive over there in the duo lane. You can continue pressuring out the tower, although he hasn't gotten much poke there. I won't be surprised, I mean, honestly, even with the lead E-Chrome has, if we see Coast be the one to rotate earlier and have more of an impact in these team fights.
That's true. That's a great point there, where maybe the rotational freedom is a little bit more apparent for Vaporish Coast in some of these situations. Things have slowed down now, though. No Pyro, no Gold Fury. So back to farming we go. And that's the area, Gore, where it really seems like Smileyface needs to start to make up some ground here. Is in these dull moments where not much is happening, but that's hard. You know, it probably feels like you need to be making plays to try to get yourself back in the game, but when you're this far behind, you know, I'm not sure where you make a play. I'm not sure what you look for, especially if you're Ferrari, to try to make something happen.
Yeah, getting aggressive, even taking someone up into the sky, Naja is not necessarily known for 100 to zeroing anybody, and then also the fact that he hasn't got any, you know, Deathbringers online, something that's really big and synergizes with that ult. Not available just yet, so you're not out-critting anybody either on the other side. I think it does benefit Ferrari for this to go late game. You can already see going into that crit now and has the tankiness kind of up front. So the setup potential is going to be there. The carry potential maybe comes a little bit later, but it is still that synergy that comes through working as a team in the 5v5. What are you doing that is enabling it? In fact, it might even be worse for them to pull someone out of Persephone.
Yeah, no chance, Baby Monster. Sorry, my friend. Tier 1 tower over in the solo lane will fall. Despite all of the kill pressure, I'd argue, going the way of the cold Alpacas, most of the tower damage has actually been returned in onto the cold Alpacas side of the map. You look at tier 1 in mid, tier 1 in right, those are quite low. But really all it was going to take is this, right? Just a 3-man group. You get Preds who's far ahead, you get Kana who's far ahead, and Astia there to support them. They're just going to walk down towers free and clear. So it's just a matter of time until those two towers ended up falling somewhere along the map. So that's a big gold spike now for the cold Alpacas. Find themselves about 4K in the lead over Smileyface. But playing the meta in the game well, Gore, Smileyface found an opening, knocked down a couple towers on the left-hand side.
Yeah, and I think in this instance, as weird as it might be, I think the 2 towers Smileyface get a little more beneficial. Just exposing that left Phoenix is always worthwhile. The tier 1s on the side of cold Alpacas are both 1 hit away from dead, especially if you get a Fire Giant. At this point, look, we're 19 minutes in. Fire Giant-enabled teams taking towers is where we have to start looking. So Smileyface are able to get aggressive into an objective and win something like that in the Fire Giant pit, then they're going to be able to find themselves a huge swing of gold and influx that comes through. And with all the gold that's on the map, they would be able to alleviate the pressure that is the gold lead that cold Alpacas have.
Oh man, Echrome goes up down on Kana here. Kana attempts to do the same, neither of them working out, but Echrome pinned against the wall, Aegis used. And there's a Fury that gets taken away by the cold Alpacas as well. In the meantime, maybe there's a small window there where Echrome thinks he's got an opportunity, but he sure does not. Baby Monster will complete the tier 1 tower over in the solo lane. But now Pred's in on the chase. There is a Somersault Cloud waiting around the corner. Hopefully he's not in the shop. He isn't, and the escape for the time being will be complete, and Preds won't go for any more.
You just gave me some PTSD. I get caught out in that position 10 times out of 10 with the store open. Absolutely, I'm buying. I don't care. I don't think anyone's going over here. And it might end up hurting them a little bit. Bevy does still go back. But now that Fire Giant started up by Gold Alpacas.
That's right, and they've got the damage to get it done pretty quickly. Bevy Monster back from base, back to base after a small amount of time. You wonder if that's the only leg that Smileyface had to stand on around this Fire Giant. Cold Alpacas have given up the objective. They're looking to fight instead. Preds has taken a lot of damage around the side, and Gunter kites away, gets a kill. Big to get rid of this Bakasura. Now Pretty Prime has been ulted as well. There's some setup from the Naja, but immediately ulted right back into the awaiting arms of Astia, and Vaporish Coast has found some freedom to operate here. Low health bars for the Cold Alpacas. Gore, I think this is probably a closer fight than Cold Alpacas thought they were going to be getting.
Yeah, with Preds dying so early, going so deep on his own, but specifically the shell, the upgraded shell on the other side, saving Agent's life and keeping that healing enabled for them. Now with the right appropriate amount of tanking and healing still coming through, this Fire Giant could go to Smileyface.
Got that sustain from Agent, who's taken a good bit of damage. Here come the Cold Alpacas, though. Is the chase down going to be enough? Half HP on the FG. Either team completing their back just yet. This is going to be a tug of war. Gunter lets the ultimate fly. Vaporish Coast deletes Ferrari on his way back in. But Echrome picks up a kill as well. It's a 1-for-1 trade on some weird FG juggling that's going on. It will continue. Watch out. Preds is respawned. He's coming back from base now around the left-hand side. It's going to take a little bit longer, but Vaporish Coast is pouring out damage right now, and Bevy Monster's just taking it on the chin.
Now, Bevy Monster is the one that's most likely, in my eyes, to get just absolutely shredded. It happened last fight, but as long as the grouping from the other three are right next to each other, that shell is going to help against this Bakasura.
River's Rebuke makes the crash down from the Somersault Cloud a little bit more interesting, but the timer, some Wukong ultimate a little bit longer. Porsche Coast reads the play well. Gunter killing spree now is pretty prime. We'll take a tumble. Bevy Monster stays alive, but Kana has other things in mind. He'll have to chase him down, but there's enough sustain there. Suddenly, Kana is a bit cut out. This man is 6-1 and 4 and hasn't been able to get things done. Gore, this has been like a 3-minute long fight. Neither team has found a full-on advantage. Neither team wants to let the other back.
Just trying for that shot. I'm surprised to see how aggressive Smileyface are. Going to be able to zone in. Fire Giant should be good. Again, Agents here with that healing. They still have one shell up, Dave, which is where my eyes go to. Gunter, the one that can really make a difference for him. Preds is just not going to feel as solid here.
I guess we are going to do this again, Goremizer. It's half HP on the Fire Giant. Preds, there's not much he can really do there. Look at how much damage he's taken. Agent dies to the FG. Asti is here around the side as well. It's half HP on the Fire Giant, but you don't have Agent for a lot of that sustain. This is probably the better option. Let's just take down the Pyromancer and walk ourselves away. Finally, the FG is left.
I mean, you get yourselves a few kills. I don't even know the math of how that all shook out because it lasts so long between these two teams. Preds dies twice, though. I can do that math in my head. Fire Giant being so potent here. If Smileyface get it, I mean, look at the state of the map. 2 tier 2 towers, 1 exposed Phoenix. They have an easier through line to the Titan in this case than we do on the side of Cold Alpacas. That being said, with the right Phoenix being exposed, if Cold Alpacas win a 5v5, the game is over at Fire Giant. So you have to be very cautious with where you're aggressing and the control you have here as Smileyface. But the gold lead's not that crazy anymore. I mean, 3,000 gold, it's still a distinct advantage for Cold Alpacas. Look at the vision, the wards they have in their inventory, the state of their items, as well as the upgrades. But they're dealing with Preds. Preds was the issue late game, and now they have 2 upgraded shells on the side of Smileyface, and at any given time, they seem to be doing just fine in shutting down Preds. And Kana hasn't been as effective because now late game scaling, it's not necessarily in his favor.
Kana is being chased down now. It's going to take full-on force of Smileyface to get the kill here, but they've brought that to the party. Lord of the Afterlife jumps on in, finds a couple, but look at the damage. Returned it on the Kana. Cold Alpacas were not there to support their solo laner, and now Smileyface, big advantage in this fight. It's a 4v5, disengaged from Preds beneath their tier 2 tower. Now the Fire Giant might finally get looked at again.
I mean, they can get aggressive into it, they have the healing, but it's still shaky. Without Kana there, I mean, you still got 5 ults that can come, or 4 ults, I should say, that can come in here and cause a lot of distress for you. Steal potential is not necessarily a non-zero factor here, so you have to be careful getting aggressive, because Preds can just jump right in.
Look at Ferrari, who's able to get into the ultimate this time. Preds waiting around the corner. Good blessing onto Preds to keep him alive. Porsche Coast is the one who picks up that kill. Could be a double around the backside. Fadeaway shots are there. Aegis into the Crystal Bay. Porsche Coast stays alive. The Heimdall is starting to get it done for the Cold Alpacas.
I mean, earlier was what? Just coasting at 0-0 and 0, and now 3-0 and 2 is just going to come into these fights, has been very good at keeping himself alive. Sometimes traversing through the Bifrost, maybe a little too far out of the fight, but still, as long as you stay alive as the carry, you can maintain it. Now they've escalated that back up to the 4K lead that they were at, back when the Fire Giant dance started a few minutes ago. So comfort on the side of Cold Alpacas as they get these upgrades, but you're looking at cooldowns. Look, Coast burns both Beads and Aegis. Beads only burned there by E-Chrome. Both shells are down. This is a good zone for Alpacas to be able to get in here, get a Fire Giant, and force a really uncomfortable fight from Smileyface.
Will Fire Giant ever go down? The question of the day, and right now is the best chance we've gotten at it. Smileyface will not contest after all of the back and forth that we've seen. It'll go quietly over to the Cold Alpacas with not much pushback over there from the Smileyface. And now there's a Gold Fury respawned as well. Probably the biggest swing we've seen in this game so far, Gore. About 5,000 gold in the advantage are the Cold Alpacas. Maybe you fight over this Fury, but I suppose if you're not willing to step up and look at the FG, Fury's probably a much lesser target to try to defend, especially if they Porsche Coast and a couple others can do it on their own.
I mean, you might be able to afford to throw someone over here, but I like this call much better. Keep your 5v5 strong. let them have the gold. They already have the Fire Giant buff. It's too much to try and fight into right there. You need the benefit of a 6th man that is the Tower or a Phoenix on your side to turn this around. Or maybe you could bait out a couple of ults, but I don't think there's any world where you step forward, bait a couple of ults, and you walk away alive from Cold Alpacas here. I think they chase you down dead no matter what, so you have to be very careful on your engage. And the question really does rise up to whether or not Smileyface have the capabilities of defending at a tier 2. I see them putting some pressure around this area. Their ward coverage should start to highlight their jungle here and make sure they can catch anyone out from Cold Alpacas on rotations. But I don't know that they have anything to really stand right at the tier 2 line. I think they can hold it for a little bit, but that tower is going to disappear quickly. Right now, the benefit they really have is where all these waves are. I mean, all of them at worst mid-map for them. Yep. They're not too worried about the tower pressure coming down from Cold Alpacas just yet, and they've already burned a minute and a half. If they can buy this much time, they might not lose a Phoenix here.
A lot of this defense has got to stand with Gunter as well. 3-0-3, by far the best KDA for Smileyface. It's been a lot of these. I'm trying to dive on Persephone, but Gunter's able to walk away, return enough damage on the back foot, and end up picking up a kill or two there. So now he's positioned himself well. Kayron's going to round out the build there. He's going to need a few more of those kills to start to stack up that item a little bit. Agent is going to use the River's Rebuke here. But as we so often discussed, you can just leap away from that one. That's a big defensive piece of utility core that's now gone.
Oh, they use the Persephone ult as well. Preds gets the tier 2. They're ready to keep going. This is a good fight for Alpacas.
Kana's in on the chase beneath this left side Phoenix here, but he'll jump on back, join the rest of his team. Preds over in the mid lane. I don't know if that's a 2v1 or a good old 1v1, but Preds gets the kill there nonetheless. Astia taken low, but not low enough. Ekrome unable to complete the kill there. All of the ultimates are down for Smileyface. All of the ultimates are down for the Cold Alpacas. If there's a game 2v1 here, it's going to be done with damage. Pretty Prime has to use the beads. He'll stay alive here. Ekrome jumps himself out and away. Preds does have those minions, Scoremizer. It's going to be the mid lane Phoenix that ends up falling. Now he can turn his attention towards the Persephone. No chance for Gunter there. No chance for Smileyface on the left-hand side. Agent will not get this one done. Cold Alpacas storm the Titan room 28 minutes in, and they'll take the set.
I mean, that game 1 was so good from Smileyface. It has me guessing what's going to go on, but Cold Alpacas, again, look at the roster, look at the names. It's something you expect to see successful. And they do exactly that, right? Whatever game 1 was, I'm glad they got it out here because they are going to have a tough time against some of the higher-tiered teams from the Challenger Circuit. Smileyface giving them some good trouble, but I'm wondering how this team's going to be able to stand. 3 games there. They look really good in games 2 and 3, but they need that to happen instantly in every other set they play.
Yeah, good news for the Cold Alpacas is you get to go on and play Belt Slap later today, right? I mean, that's your victory for winning this set here. Obviously, double elimination, so Smileyface has that chance to work through that lower bracket and make their way in on later into the weekend. Gore, I suppose this is what we figured would happen here over in EU. We'd have some competitive sets, regardless of what happens with Belt Slap, and those top 2 teams later on remains to be seen. But at least to start off this weekend, we got a 3-game set to start things off. We'll go back to Aggro and Mifflin though on the desk to break this one down.
Thank you, Dave and Gore. Congratulations to the Cold Alpacas. They end up turning up and defeating the SCC team. The SOC showing up and looking pretty good here in Europe today. But Mifflin did take all 3 games. Game 3 was Cold Alpacas for a long time. Then it started to kind of come back towards Smileyface before Cold Alpacas finally wrested away control the final time.
Is it really fair to say Cold Alpacas? Shouldn't we just say Vaporish Coast? This man, he's built different, right? I mean, that's the only real way to explain it. You don't get away with a quadra kill, multiple triple kills, double kills, styling throughout the entirety of the set, and then go undying as they well. I think this guy's a huge contender. It's one of everyone.
Coast certainly looked great in this one. This Heimdall play around the Fire Giant was fantastic. And it wasn't his only one. He was making plays throughout on this. Kana as well on this Osiris was absolutely stellar. Did not allow the backline to escape pretty much ever, combining on those dives with Preds quite effectively. And then Astia on the Kepri, I thought, was pretty solid in this one as well.
I'll be interested in how well Cold Alpacas kind of
Seems like we're having some audio issues for you there, Mifflin. So unfortunately, I'm going to have to cut you off as I go through the post-game stats. Preds looking in at 6-3, Kana 7-2, and Coast sitting at that pristine 4-0-3. Echrome obviously fantastic on the ROM in game number 1 of this set, but ultimately, after not getting the ROM, did not look quite as good. I wonder if the lack of Cupid prioritization is going to continue as we see this weekend, particularly in Europe, or if we're going to see other teams go to it and it's just a Smileyface thing where they don't really prioritize the Cupid. I think we'll have to wait and see. Miff, are you back? You got thoughts on the Hou-Yi pick here for Echrome? No, he's not back. All right, well, we gave it the old college try. We're going to try and get that worked out for you, everyone. Thanks for sticking with us. Let's take a look at the schedule for the rest of today. Next setup is going to be Pikachu Noobs 2 up against the Warm Snails. Belt Slap now knows their opponent, and we will see Cold Alpacas for a second time today right after that. And then we'll close out the day with the Snake Pit up against the winner of Pikachu Noobs 2 and the Warm Snails. This is your bracket for the entire weekend. In Europe, of course, we also have our North American games, and as you can see, it is double elimination, so if you're a fan of Smileyface, don't fret too much. They still have a chance in order to make a run, though obviously becomes much more difficult from here. So make sure you stay tuned. Set 2 of the European SWC wildcards coming at you right on the other side of this break.